I was kneeling in the snow outside the imperial study in the palace of the Great Xia Empire. My body was frozen, no breath, no heartbeat. I looked like a dead man, but my back stayed straight, like a sword pointing at the sky. I'm Xia Tian, the ninth prince, the emperor's ninth son. The door of the study opened, and the crown prince walked out. He's a pale-faced man with a hooked nose and cruel eyes. He carried an imperial decree and read it aloud. I was being named king of Huang province, a wasteland. I had to leave tomorrow and could never return to the capital without permission. Then he showed me my gift from our father, a broken jade bowl. He told me to worship it like it was the emperor himself. It was all a joke to him. My mother, noble consort Qin, rushed over. She saw I had no pulse and screamed that I was already dead, begging them to stop humiliating me. The crown prince just laughed. He said our father knew I was frozen to death and gave me the title only so I could have a decent funeral. My mother demanded to know why they wanted me dead so badly. The crown prince explained it coldly. My mother is a princess of the former dynasty. Because I carry that old royal bloodline, the loyalists of the old regime would always have hope as long as I lived. With me dead, their dreams would die too, and everyone would serve the Xia dynasty without question. My mother cried out to my father behind the study doors, reminding him he once promised her that if she became his consort and helped him win over the old officials, her children would live long lives. There was only silence from inside. The crown prince also revealed the real reason things got worse for me. My mother had tried to arrange a marriage between me and the daughter of the left prime minister, a man from the most powerful family in the land. That family was too strong. The crown prince could marry their daughters, but I absolutely could not. My mother's attempt to protect me had actually sealed my death. He also admitted he wanted that girl for himself. She was the empire's greatest beauty. He planned to marry her older sister as his official wife first, then take her as a concubine. He said anyone who dared compete with him for a woman would die. Then, right there in the snow, my fingers twitched. Warmth crept back into my body. My heart began to beat again. The old Xia Tian, the original ninth prince, was gone. A new soul had crossed over into this body, a soldier king from another world sharing the same name. I merged with the prince's memories, opened my eyes, looked at the shocked crown prince, and smiled. Sorry to disappoint you, big brother. I'm still alive. He screamed and collapsed, so terrified he wet himself. His two golden-armored guards drew their swords and swung at me. My mother threw herself in front of me to shield me. In that split second, I said the only thing that could save us. Killing a prince means your entire clans die. The blade stopped just above my head, cutting a few strands of my hair. The guards were sweating. They knew the rule. The emperor can kill a prince, but anyone else who does it loses everything. They sheathed their swords and apologized. I looked at the crown prince, still on the ground in his own mess, and couldn't help myself. You wet yourself, big brother. The old me had spent 16 years hiding in the library, pretending to be a fool, and they still tried to kill me. There was no point in pretending anymore. The crown prince was humiliated and furious, but beneath his rage, I could see fear. His plan to use our father's hand to get rid of me had failed. Now I was alive and had a title. He was asking himself the same question I was. What happens next? I checked my body and found it thin but muscular, built for fighting, with natural superhuman strength. Combined with my soldier's soul, I had real potential in this cold weapon world full of warring kingdoms. My mother held my hand tight, crying with relief that I was alive. I called her mother by habit, but she corrected me. In the palace, it's royal mother. The emperor summoned us all inside. My father sat on his throne, staring at me with complicated eyes. He asked if I hated him. I said no. A son obeys his father, just as a subject obeys his king. He seemed pleased by my answer, then tested me further. If I ordered you to kill yourself right now, would you do it? I didn't hesitate. I charged straight at a golden pillar to smash my head. But an old eunuch caught me, exactly as I'd gambled he would. If I died in the study, the court historian sitting right there would record that the emperor murdered his own son. My father couldn't afford that stain on his reputation. He backed off and kept the plan. I leave tomorrow for Huang province. My mother tried to buy time, arguing that tradition gave new kings half a year to recruit staff and build an army before departing. But my father countered with an excuse. Enemy troops were gathering at the border, so I had to go immediately. I accepted. Secretly, I was glad. Once I'm out of this palace, they can't kill me so easily. As for resources, my father gave me almost nothing. Some gold, silver, and fabric. No proper army, no officials, no supplies. The historian noted I'd be the poorest king in the empire. My father also said the crown prince would send 1,000 soldiers to escort me, which I trusted about as far as I could throw them. Then my mother played her last card. She reminded my father of a promise he'd made, to approve my marriage to Sima Lan, the empire's most beautiful woman. To my surprise, he agreed immediately and even ordered her to travel with me so we could marry right after arriving. That sudden generosity made me suspicious. This emperor never does anything out of kindness. Whatever his plan is, I'll have to figure it out fast. My mother hugged me outside the study and whispered a secret. There's a hidden group called the Hidden Dragon Society, made up of loyalists from the old dynasty. They could help me. She told me to survive and give her 3 years. I promised I'd come back for her. At my small palace, I gathered my servants and asked who'd follow me to the wasteland. Only one raised his hand. Xiao Bai, a young eunuch my age who I'd saved from a beating 3 years ago. Everyone else took their severance pay and left, looking at Xiao Bai like he was already a dead man. That night, a mob of royal cousins showed up at my gate demanding a death match. They were all in love with Sima Lan, and the news that a useless prince got to marry her drove them insane with jealousy. I ignored them. They weren't the real danger. The real danger was the Sima family itself. I finally understood my father's scheme. By forcing this marriage, he made the most powerful family in the empire my enemy. The Sima clan would know that being tied to me, the prince with forbidden blood, would put a target on their backs. Their only way out was to kill me before I reached my territory. My father didn't need to dirty his own hands anymore. At dawn, Xiao Bai and I loaded 2 carts ourselves and drove out of the palace. Every guard and servant we passed whispered insults. Xiao Bai wanted to fight them, but I told him we'd shut them up with strength someday. I sent him to buy medicine supplies while I headed to the west gate to collect my 1,000 soldiers. I arrived early, but someone was already waiting. A beautiful carriage decorated with roses, the mark of the Sima family. Standing on it was a stunning young woman with bright eyes like stars and an otherworldly grace that made my heart skip. This was Sima Lan, the empire's greatest beauty, and she was even more breathtaking than her reputation. I greeted her politely. She smiled and teased me for driving my own cart to my kingdom. Then she asked me a question. Can you guess why I'm here waiting for you? I told Sima Lan I knew exactly why she came. To see if I was really the useless coward everyone said. I explained that marrying her was part of my plan all along. I needed a reason to leave the palace, even if it meant making enemies. Staying inside those walls meant waiting to be slaughtered like a pig in a pen. Freedom was worth the risk. She was surprised I could read her so well. I told her I knew her father wanted to reject the marriage decree, but she stopped him because she had a smarter plan. Just wait for me to die. Everyone expected I'd be killed on the road or crushed by the enemy army at the border. Once I was dead, she'd be free again, maybe even free from her family's political marriage schemes forever. She asked how I knew all that. I told her I'd read her poems. Every line she ever wrote was about wanting freedom, wanting to be more than a beautiful bargaining chip traded between powerful men. I told her I was her only real chance at that freedom. That hit something deep in her. She dropped the superior attitude completely. She tested me further, asking what I knew about Huang province. I laid it all out. Smallest province, mostly wild mountains and poisonous swamps, used as a prison colony for centuries. The locals were fierce and hated the government. 20 governors had died in 20 years. On top of that, the Tianling Empire raided every year, kidnapping citizens as slaves and slaughtering anyone they wanted. She asked if I was afraid. I said fear wouldn't change anything, so why bother with it? Then she asked the real question, what would I actually do if I survived? I told her plainly, anyone who invades my land dies, anyone who hurts my people dies, anyone who enslaves my sisters dies. No matter how far or how strong the enemy, I would make them pay. She asked if I'd want her to marry me willingly someday. I said yes, if I kept my promises. She smiled and said men's words are cheap, but she was curious enough to come along for the ride. If I lived, she'd walk beside me. If I died, she'd go home and never carry my name. That was enough. The Sima family's killing intent disappeared. She waved a handkerchief 3 times. A signal, and armed warriors emerged from the trees nearby. They had been ready to end me. Now they stood down. Sima Lan ordered her people to follow me to Huang province. Her bodyguard leader, Sima Gu, was a cold-faced, beautiful girl with an incredibly curvy figure. I couldn't help stealing a glance, purely out of appreciation, I swear. She led 20 supply carts out of the city, each one loaded with sacks of premium rice from the heartland, 100 stone in total. That's 10,000 pounds of grain. Sima Lan told me it was a gift from her father, though she joked it was really because he didn't want his daughter going hungry. She also shared something useful. The wild mountains of Huang province actually had plenty of fertile land and rich mineral deposits. Just no way to get anything out because the terrain was too dangerous. If I could tame those mountains, the province could become wealthy. This girl had clearly done her homework, and I liked that about her. She told me plainly that helping me was helping herself. That was her deal, practical, honest, and smart. Then I heard sloppy footsteps from the city gate. Out came my 1,000 elite soldiers from the Crown Prince, a miserable line of wounded men in rusted armor and broken weapons. Every single one was injured. Some limped on bad legs, some had stiff arms that barely moved, and a few had lost an eye. They looked half-starved, with wrinkles on young faces from years of poor nutrition. Leading them were the 2 golden-armored guards from yesterday, Lu Shu and Gao Fei. They knelt before me and reported that the Crown Prince had sent only men from the wounded veterans camp. Out of the 1,000, they could only pick 100 who were well enough to walk straight, and even those were in rough shape. But I wasn't disappointed. I was thrilled, and I had to fight to keep it off my face. These men were treasures, battle-hardened veterans who had fought real wars against the Tianlang Empire. You can't buy that kind of experience with gold. The Crown Prince thought he was insulting me by sending me broken soldiers. He was actually giving me exactly what I needed. I asked Sima Lan to step into her carriage for a moment while I inspected the men. She went inside but pulled back the curtain to watch, too curious to look away. I ordered the soldiers to strip off their armor and shirts so I could see their wounds. They grumbled and cursed. It was freezing cold, and they felt insulted, like I was questioning whether they'd really fought. But they obeyed, because soldiers obey. What I saw confirmed everything. Every single wound was on the front of their bodies. Not one scar on any of their backs. That meant these men had never turned and run from a fight. They had faced the enemy head-on every time, taken blades and arrows to the chest, arms, and face, and kept standing. Each ugly, twisted scar was a medal of honor. The moment they realized I understood what those scars meant, something changed. These beaten down, slouching, bitter men suddenly straightened up like swords pulled from their sheaths. Their eyes came alive. A fire lit up inside them. The fighting spirit of old warriors who thought no one would ever see their worth again. The whole atmosphere shifted in an instant. Lu Shu reported that he and Gao Fei had already verified every man's service record and injury report. All of them had been wounded in direct combat against the enemy. I praised both of them for their sharp judgment. They'd picked the right men and earned their first mark of merit under my command. Their faces lit up with surprise and pride. Inside the carriage, I heard Sima Lan quietly ask her bodyguard what the location of a soldier's wounds had to do with anything. She was learning too, and I could tell she was starting to understand what kind of army I was building. While I was inspecting the soldiers, Sima Lan was watching everything from her carriage. Her bodyguard Sima Gu explained to her what I was doing. Wounds on the front mean the soldier fought face-to-face. Wounds on the back usually mean he was running away or got stabbed by his own side. Sima Lan was starting to realize I wasn't the clueless bookworm everyone thought. She told Sima Gu I was someone with hidden brilliance who plays the fool on purpose. Sima Gu couldn't believe it. She even checked if Sima Lan had a fever. But Sima Lan was serious. She said you can't judge someone by rumors alone. You have to watch how they think and act before deciding if they're a dragon or a worm. She ordered Sima Gu to send word back to the Sima family that she was going to Huang province willingly. Then I noticed something else about the soldiers that made my heart pound. Every single one of them had bowed legs, the kind you get from spending years on horseback. These weren't just infantry veterans. They were cavalry soldiers, the most valuable type of warrior in this entire world. The Tianlang Empire dominates the continent with their horsemen because they grow up riding from birth, while the Xia Empire has very few riders and has always been on the defensive because of it. Any cavalryman who survived combat against Tianlang riders had to be elite. The Crown Prince had accidentally handed me 100 of the rarest soldiers in the Empire. Lu Shu and Gao Fei had clearly noticed too. They deliberately picked these men, but hadn't told me yet, maybe testing whether I'd figure it out myself. When I called them on it, they dropped to their knees in fear, but I just laughed and gave them another mark of merit. I could see something shift in their eyes after that. They'd spent years as the Crown Prince's tools, getting yelled at and treated like servants, and now they'd been sent here to die alongside me. But instead, they found a leader who recognized good work and rewarded it with respect. For the first time, they looked at me not as a doomed prince they were stuck with, but as someone worth following. Inside the carriage, Sima Gu explained to Sima Lan why these soldiers were so precious, and also why the Crown Prince was willing to give them away. Their injuries couldn't be healed with the medicine available in this era. If they could be fixed, every army in the Empire would have fought over them. They were considered permanently broken, which is the only reason the Crown Prince let them go. But here was my secret advantage that nobody knew. Before I crossed into this body, I came from a family of traditional Chinese doctors. I'd mastered both Eastern and Western medicine and served as a military surgeon. Looking at these men's wounds, I could see they were mostly surface-level damage. No shattered bones, no severed tendons. With the right drugs and a few minor surgeries, I could restore every one of them to full fighting condition. What this world considered incurable was routine work for me. I needed loyal warriors desperately. The road ahead was full of people trying to kill me, and these forgotten soldiers were exactly the answer. If I could heal them and earn their devotion, they'd fight for me like no one else would. I told Lu Shu and Gao Fei my secret, that I knew medicine and could fix these men. Their jaws nearly hit the ground. Then I walked to the front of the formation and told the soldiers to get dressed. They scrambled back into their tattered armor, cursing the cold but standing a little taller than before. I could feel their eyes locked on me, curious and guarded, waiting to hear what this so-called useless prince had to say. I stood before those broken soldiers and spoke from the heart. I told them that old soldiers never die. They just fade from their wounds. The words hit them like thunder. Their eyes went wide, then red, then wet. They started laughing, big, roaring laughter that carried pride and pain and years of being forgotten. Then the laughter turned to tears. These men had bled for the Empire. They'd charged into Tianling cavalry and survived when most didn't. But when they came home wounded, their battle honors were stolen by rich nobles' sons who'd barely lifted a sword, and the real fighters got tossed into a neglected camp to rot. Nobody checked on their healing. Nobody thanked them. Their burning patriotism slowly turned cold, replaced by bitterness and the certainty that their country had thrown them away like garbage. And now here I was, a prince, the emperor's own blood, telling them I saw their worth. That changed everything. They dropped to their knees as one and swore to die for me. I told them to stand, that the ground was cold, and I kept going. I asked them why they'd originally joined the army. Was it for the pitiful soldiers' pay? Nobody answered, but I could see the memories flooding back. I told them what they already knew deep down. They'd picked up their swords because they wanted to protect their homeland, their families, their people from the Tianlang raiders who'd been burning villages and dragging citizens away as slaves for 20 years. They fought not because it was easy or rewarding, but because someone had to. And even though they were ordinary soldiers contributing what seemed like a small share of the fight, they were the ones who showed the enemy that Siam men would ride into battle and face death without flinching. I admitted they'd been cheated. They bled for their country and got nothing fair in return. But I told them the land itself remembered their sacrifice, and their families were grateful even if the court wasn't. What they did was the highest glory a person could earn. When I said those words, highest glory, something shattered inside them. All the resentment, all the bitterness, all the years of feeling worthless dissolved in that moment. They knelt again, every single one, and roared that they'd die for me. Lu Shu and Gao Fei knelt beside them. They meant it. These were men who'd stared death in the face and could smell the difference between a liar and someone who truly understood them. I'd earned their loyalty not with gold or titles, but with words that honored what they'd sacrificed. Up on the city wall, the old soldiers standing guard had been watching and listening the whole time. Some had quietly knelt along with the men below, tears running down their weathered faces. Their commander, also moved to the edge of tears, clenched his fists and declared that anyone who ever called me a useless prince again would get beaten so badly their own mother wouldn't recognize them. He said quietly that I had the look of a true leader. Inside her carriage, Sima Lan was deeply stirred. She asked Sima Gu whether I carried the spirit of a hero or an ambitious warlord. Sima Gu said if she were one of those old soldiers, she'd pledge her life to me too. Sima Lan thought carefully and said she actually hoped I was more warlord than hero, because heroes are sentimental and full of weaknesses, while someone who wants to build something lasting needs to be ruthless when it counts. Sima Gu understood the logic, but wondered privately whether a ruthless man was truly worth following or worth loving. Just then, a long line of carriages began rolling out of the city gate, far more than expected. I told the soldiers to rest in place and wait for orders. Then Xiao Bai jumped down from his cart and knelt before me to report. He'd done exactly what I asked, sold off all the palace jewelry and treasures I'd been given, and used the money to buy supplies. 2 carts of medicinal herbs, 10 carts carrying 1,000 jars of strong liquor, which I'd need both for treating wounds and for sterilizing during surgeries. 10 carts of grain, another 100 stone worth. 10 carts of fabric, 10,000 bolts of cloth. 2 carts of salt, 1,000 pounds. 2 carts of beef tallow, 1,000 pounds. And 4 carts of pork, 2,000 pounds total between fatty cuts and lean. I could hear the soldiers' stomachs growling behind me, though not a single one broke formation. These men had been rotting in the wounded veterans' camp where the military budget meant for their care got skimmed at every level above them. By the time any money reached their hands, all they could afford was pickled vegetables. They'd been starving for months, maybe years, while bureaucrats pocketed the funds meant to heal them. I told Xiao Bai the jewelry served its purpose well, traded for things that actually keep people alive. He looked sad about giving up palace treasures, but I cut him off. People need food. My soldiers had been eating garbage in that camp, their bodies too malnourished to heal properly. From today forward, every meal would include meat so they could rebuild their strength. The old soldier's eyes went red again. A prince who sold his own riches to feed them. Someone who actually treated them as human beings worth caring for. I could practically feel the silent oaths forming in their hearts, swearing to protect me with their lives. Then Xiao Bai glanced at Lu Shu and Gao Fei, silently asking whether he should share sensitive information in front of them. I shook my head and told him these two were family now, no secrets needed. Xiao Bai reported that, just as I predicted, the Crown Prince had ordered the Imperial Armory to refuse supplying my unit with any weapons or equipment. But I'd planned ahead. I had Xiao Bai bribe the Armory's General Lu with 100 gold pieces, and in return we quietly pulled out 1,000 sets of thick cotton winter uniforms, 500 sets of quality iron armor, 500 top-grade iron sabers, 500 iron spears, 100 powerful 5-stone crossbows with 6,000 arrows, and 100 shields. All the paperwork was done cleanly, everything hidden among the supply carts. 10 full wagons of military equipment, more than enough to arm every man I had from head to toe. Lu Shu and Gao Fei were overjoyed. We had medicine, food, clothing, and weapons. Nothing was missing. I could see the shift in their eyes. They were starting to believe this might not be a death march after all. I checked the sky, nearly time to move. I called the soldiers to attention one final time and gave them an honest choice. My territory was a dangerous wasteland bordering a hostile empire. The odds of dying were high. Anyone who followed me would be my brother from that day forward, and I swore they'd never go hungry as long as I had food. Anyone who wanted to stay in the capital could take 10 silver pieces and go home to heal in peace. No shame, no punishment. Not one man stepped forward to leave. They knelt together and told me to stop asking. They were all orphans, no families, no wives, no children, nothing keeping them in the capital. Wherever I went would be their home. Their voices shook the ground when they shouted it together. Where you are is our home. That hit me harder than I expected. I'd crossed into this world completely alone, just as much an orphan as any of them. I ordered Xiao Bai, Lu Shu, and Gao Fei to lead the convoy ahead to Peach Blossom Valley, 20 miles down the road, and get the soldiers outfitted in warm uniforms, fresh armor, and new weapons. The road ahead would have plenty of fighting. Sima Lan's household guards helped load everyone onto the carts, and the whole column moved out. Sima Lan herself walked up beside me, and said she was starting to believe I might actually survive the journey. I told her I'd do my best not to make her a widow. Her face flushed red, and she quickly changed the subject, asking why I'd sent everyone ahead and stayed behind alone without a single guard. She guessed I was showing weakness to the crown prince on purpose. She was smart, but she was wrong about my real reason. Right then, a luxurious carriage rolled up to the gate. A eunuch announced the crown prince had come to see me off. He stepped out looking smug, waving his attendants away so we could speak privately. Sima Lan quietly moved aside. The tension between us was thick enough to cut, and she knew it could explode at any moment. The crown prince's eyes crawled greedily over Sima Lan's retreating figure before he turned to me with a poisonous smile and wished me a smooth journey and a convenient disappearance along the way. I reminded him calmly that if such words got out, the imperial censors would impeach him for misconduct unbecoming of a crown prince. He scoffed that everyone here was loyal to him, so who would talk? I pointed at myself and told him if he kept trying to kill me, I'd hire 100 storytellers to spread the tale of how the mighty crown prince wet himself in the snow across every city in the empire. His snake eyes narrowed. He tried a different angle, mocking me for the 1,000 wounded soldiers he'd assigned me, needling me about only taking 100, hoping I'd lose my temper so he could humiliate me. But I genuinely felt grateful for those men. They were worth more than he'd ever understand, so there was no anger for him to exploit. I thanked him sincerely, which only frustrated him more. I couldn't resist one more jab. I told him to keep his eyes wide open and watch what I'd become. Then I added that unfortunately, his eyes were too small to open very wide. The crown prince had tiny, triangular eyes that gave him a naturally sinister look. Court officials whispered behind his back that he didn't have the face of a future emperor. It was his deepest insecurity, and I just ripped it open in front of him. His hand twitched toward his sword. I could see the rage screaming inside him. He wanted to cut me down right there, but he held back. Instead, through clenched teeth, he asked me a question. Did I know who the most beautiful woman in the world was? The crown prince told me about the world's most beautiful woman, Princess Hu Yin Duoer of the Tianlang Empire. She wasn't just beautiful, she was also one of their top 3 generals, and her territory bordered my wasteland province. Every year after winter, her armies raided Huang province for grain and slaves. The crown prince was trying to scare me, grinning as he described how she'd probably capture me and make me her pet husband since I was handsome enough. I smiled back and told him that once I got to Huang province, I'd capture this so-called world's greatest beauty and make her my personal servant girl. I said I wouldn't shame the royal family name. The crown prince was so shocked he made a reckless bet. If I ever actually captured her, he'd eat the stone lions outside his palace gate. I accepted the bet on the spot and told him I looked forward to watching him chew stone. Then I twisted the knife deeper. I asked with fake concern whether he'd caught any illness from wetting himself in the snow that day. His face went dark as ink. Before he could recover, I hit him with the real killing blow. I pointed out that despite having a wife and 2 concubines, he still had no children after all these years, and asked if maybe something was wrong with his body. That was his deepest wound. He was 30 years old and couldn't produce an heir, and the whole court whispered about it. The crown prince nearly exploded. I could see the veins bulging on his neck, his nostrils flaring, his hand twitching toward his sword. He wanted to stab me 81 times and then stab me again. But he held himself together, barely, climbed into his carriage, and told me coldly that he was done seeing me off. As his carriage pulled away, I called after him with a cheerful voice, asking him to give my regards to his 3 wives and wishing him success in becoming a father soon, with many children to come. Inside the dark tunnel of the city gate, the crown prince coughed up blood. Then he summoned a mysterious woman called Xia Mei Ren, a shadowy, graceful figure who appeared at his window like a phantom. He screamed at her to kill me immediately, abandoning whatever careful assassination plan they'd already prepared. He couldn't wait any longer. He wanted me dead as fast as possible. The woman hesitated. Changing plans on short notice was risky, but she agreed. After the carriage passed through the gate, she vanished without a trace, as if she'd never existed. That was exactly what I wanted. I deliberately pushed every one of the crown prince's buttons, his embarrassing incident in the snow, his small eyes, his inability to have children, not because I enjoyed it, but because it was strategy. He'd already planted assassins along my route to Huang province. If I could make him lose his temper and rush his plans, his killers would make mistakes. A furious enemy is a sloppy enemy, and sloppy enemies are easier to survive. Meanwhile, Left Prime Minister Sima Jian had been listening to our entire conversation from a carriage hidden inside the gate tunnel. He came out to say goodbye to his daughter. He couldn't resist asking why I provoked the crown prince so recklessly. I called him uncle and asked him to call me son-in-law. Sima Lan blushed and glared at me, but her father was caught off guard for a moment before recovering. He said he'd use that title only after I survived long enough to actually reach Huang province. I explained my reasoning. Provoking the crown prince into abandoning his careful plans would give me an advantage on the road. Sima Jian stroked his beard and looked at me with new respect. He said I clearly understood not just soldiers, but military strategy itself. Then he made me a bet of his own. If I could beat back the Tianlang army after spring and establish myself in Huang province, the entire Sima family would throw their full support behind me. I accepted gratefully. He asked me one final question. What was my true ambition? I stood straight, hands behind my back, eyes on the sky, and spoke for ancient vows. To establish the heart of heaven and earth, to secure the destiny of the people, to continue the lost teachings of the ancient sages, and to open 10,000 generations of peace. These words didn't exist in this world. They came from the civilization I'd left behind, 5,000 years of wisdom compressed into 4 sentences. In this land, which shared some early history with my old world but had diverged after the Qin dynasty, no scholar had ever expressed anything so grand. The words hit Sima Jian and Sima Lan like thunderbolts. Their minds reeled. Was I trying to become a saint, or was I declaring my intention to become emperor? Sima Jian's eyes blazed with excitement. He told his daughter to help me with everything she had, and if she ever needed anything, to send word home immediately. Then he turned to me, entrusted his daughter to my care, and walked away. As he left, I could hear him murmuring my 4 vows to himself, shaking his head in amazement, saying the whole world had misjudged the 9th prince. He said he'd sit in the capital and watch me stir up storms in the wasteland. After I left, things were moving behind the scenes that I didn't know about yet. Sima Jian, riding back to the capital, explained to his bodyguard why he didn't kill me. Killing a prince never ends well for the killer. The emperor would hold that crime over the Sima family forever, using it as a leash. But letting Sima Lan go with me served a different purpose. If the Sima family had married both daughters to the crown prince, their combined power would have terrified the emperor into destroying either the crown prince or the Sima family entirely. Sending Sima Lan to me, the weakest prince, showed the emperor that the Sima family wasn't allying with the crown prince and remained loyal to the throne. It was survival through sacrifice. Sima Jian ordered his elite guards to protect his daughter's life at all costs. But as for me, if I died, I was just a worm pretending to be a dragon and not worth saving. Back in the palace, the emperor sat in his study watching the snow fall. He learned that only the crown prince and the prime minister had come to see me off. Every other official in the capital stayed home, afraid to be seen supporting me. The emperor seemed almost hurt by that, muttering that he wasn't so petty that people should fear sending off his own son. Then he asked his old eunuch a strange question. Why did it make him feel relieved that Sima Jian hadn't killed me? The eunuch answered carefully. A dragon's child can only be punished by the dragon himself. Outsiders who touch a prince must die. The emperor laughed, appreciating the answer. But he also knew the crown prince had already set up ambushes along my route. He closed his eyes and said my fate depended on how tough I was. He also revealed his deeper game. He wanted the loyalists of the old dynasty to expose themselves trying to help me, so he could wipe them all out. At once, he ordered my mother moved to an isolated palace on a barren hill, cutting off all her outside contact, wanting to see what hidden forces would reveal themselves. Then the emperor said something chilling to himself as he stared at the snow. They say a tiger won't eat its own cub. But are you really my son? The old eunuch pretended not to hear, terrified by the question. Yet strangely, the emperor then ordered that my royal seal, official robes, and ceremonial guard be sent after me, things he'd deliberately withheld before. The emperor's heart was truly an ocean, impossible to read. 20 miles outside the capital, I reached an abandoned fortress called Peach Blossom Valley, surrounded by early blooming cherry trees in the snow. I decided we'd stop here for the night instead of pushing forward. Sima Gu openly questioned whether I was already too tired to continue, and Sima Lan pinched her waist to shut her up, apologizing on her behalf. I wasn't bothered. I could tell they were testing my temperament again. I explained the real reason. My soldiers' old wounds hadn't healed, and pushing injured men through forced marches would break their bodies completely. For the next several days, we'd travel half a day and rest the other half, giving me time to treat their injuries, feed them properly, and rebuild their strength before picking up speed. The soldiers protested. They swore they could handle the pace, but I told them I was their prince and their doctor, and right now they needed hot food, a bath, clean clothes, and real sleep. I sent Xiao Bai to manage the supply carts, and handed Lu Shu and Gao Fei a defense plan I'd drawn up for the fortress. Positions, formations, everything mapped out on paper. Their eyes lit up when they read it. Sima Lan tried to peek at my plans through Sima Gu, but the two guards blocked her view. She and Sima Gu made a show of talking about it loudly enough for me to hear, hoping I'd explain. I smiled, said nothing, and walked inside. Every minute counted now. I needed to heal my soldiers, feed them back to fighting shape, and prepare for whatever the Crown Prince had waiting for us on the road ahead. Inside the fortress, I studied the layout. Stone walls 3 meters high, arrow marks and burn scars from old battles, watchtowers still standing. It was rough but solid enough to defend. My 60 carts of supplies filled every open space, and the abandoned place came alive with noise and activity. I stood at the entrance to the main hall watching my small crew settle in. This ragged group was my entire foundation. Everything depended on them. I needed to figure out how to make them stronger, faster, before the killing started. Then I looked at the horses in the yard, and an idea struck me like lightning. I knew something from my old world that could change cavalry warfare in this era completely. I rushed inside, swept the dust off a broken table, and started drawing. What came out was a full set of riding equipment with 2 extra pieces that didn't exist anywhere in this world yet. Xiao Bai recognized the design's purpose immediately and told me it would make our riders fearless against Tianling cavalry. I rolled up the blueprints and asked about the blacksmiths he'd been recruiting. 5 families, 20 skilled craftsmen total, all men who'd angered powerful nobles and needed to flee the capital. They'd arrive by evening. Backgrounds checked, no spies among them. I assigned sleeping quarters, 10 soldiers per room, my core group in the main hall, and Sima Lan's people in the rear courtyard. When the snow finally stopped and a bit of sun broke through, Xiao Bai set up 10 army cooking pots in the courtyard and started boiling water for baths. Then I did something that shocked everyone. I went into the makeshift bathhouse first, stripped down, and waited for the soldiers. When Lu Shu, Gao Fei, and 8 wounded veterans walked in carrying their buckets, they froze. Their prince was standing there naked, ready to bathe alongside them like a common soldier. I could practically hear their brains short-circuiting. They'd never imagined sharing a bath with royalty, and for a terrifying moment, I could see them wondering if I had some strange preferences. I broke the tension by pointing out that we were soldiers and comrades now, not master and servants, so there was nothing to be shy about. One bold, old veteran glanced below my waist, grinned, and loudly declared that none of them could compete with my natural endowment, predicting my future wives would be very fortunate women. I hadn't expected that particular compliment, but it made everyone burst out laughing. After that, the last wall between us crumbled completely. They stopped being stiff and awkward and started treating me like a brother. What I didn't know was that Sima Gu had climbed onto the bathhouse roof and was pressing her ear against the tiles, eavesdropping on everything. She reported back to Sima Lan with a red face, telling her the soldiers were praising my impressive assets. Sima Lan blinked innocently and asked what kind of assets they meant. Sima Lan figured out why my soldiers kept blocking Sima Gu from snooping around our defenses. She explained it to her bodyguard. Even though we had a marriage decree between us, our real relationship was more like a bet. I couldn't afford to trust anyone outside my own people, because one mistake meant death. She respected that, and ordered her team to set up their own independent defenses inside the fortress. She also quietly told Sima Gu to stay close to me when fighting started and protect me with her life, because I was the key to Sima Lan's freedom. But if everything fell apart, Sima Gu had permission to retreat, because Sima Lan valued her just as much. What I didn't know yet was that danger was already waiting ahead. 20 miles from our fortress stood Tiger Mountain, a steep, heavily forested ridge overlooking the only road west from the capital. A bandit gang called the Tiger Fortress had been operating there for 3 years, murderers and fugitives from the capital who robbed and killed every traveler they caught, leaving no survivors so the authorities could never track them down. But those bandits were about to have their own reckoning. A group of black-clad assassins, led by a baby-faced young woman with a sweet face and a blood-dripping sword, slaughtered the entire gang in minutes. The assassins weren't there for justice. They were clearing the mountain to set up an ambush for me. This girl was called the Second Holy Messenger, and she took orders from a senior woman called the First Holy Messenger. A scout arrived and reported that I'd stopped at Peach Blossom Fortress instead of continuing down the road. The original plan had been to kill me at the mountain pass, but the Crown Prince couldn't wait. He wanted my head immediately. New orders came down. If I didn't leave the fortress tonight, the assassins would storm it, kill everyone inside, and leave no one alive. The baby-faced killer accepted the mission without hesitation and swore she'd be carrying my severed head to her superior by morning. I was inside that fortress right now, bathing with my soldiers, cracking jokes, building trust, completely unaware that a team of elite killers was preparing to descend on us before dawn. In the bathhouse, I shared my royal soap, a medicinal herb called Zhu Ling that only the imperial family used, with the soldiers. They were afraid to touch it at first, saying rough men like them didn't deserve such luxury. I told them we'd chosen to share hardship and death together, so refusing to share the good things would make people think I was the kind of leader who only wanted loyalty during hard times but kept the rewards for himself. That shut down their protests. I also explained the real reason behind the bath. Washing their wounds thoroughly with the soap would prevent infection and stop the rotting that killed more soldiers than swords did. They didn't understand the word infection, but they trusted me. Xiaobai followed behind with jars of strong liquor, dabbing alcohol on every cleaned wound to disinfect them before I'd begin proper treatment after lunch. Lu Shu and Gao Fei walked out in fresh uniforms and had a private conversation that I didn't hear but could have predicted. They agreed I wasn't like any prince they'd ever served, more like a wise teacher who made people want to follow him naturally. Gao Fei said most nobles could share suffering but never share success, especially royals, but he believed I was different. They clasped hands and made a pact to serve me with everything they had and gamble on a future together. I cooked for everyone personally. I set up army pots in the courtyard, boiled noodles, sprinkled coarse salt, then ladled 3 scoops of scalding beef tallow over them, so the broth erupted with flavor. I carved slabs of half-fat roasted meat and laid them on top. Oil-splashed noodles, a dish from my old world that nobody here had ever tasted. I handed the first bowl to Old Ghost, the crude veteran who'd been making dirty jokes in the bath. He took it without thanking me, which actually made me happy. It meant he'd stopped treating me like a distant lord and started treating me like family. After one bite, his eyes went wide. He shouted to the others that my noodles were incredible. The soldiers lined up in good order, each taking a bowl from my hands without ceremony, squatting wherever they could find space and eating like starving wolves. I crouched beside Old Ghost with my own bowl and ate the same way, slurping and chewing shoulder to shoulder with them. Old Ghost finished, collapsed on his back in the snow, and stared at the clouds. He said he couldn't remember the last time he'd eaten until full. New clothes, hot food, real meat, it felt like paradise. Then he grinned and admitted that with a full stomach, his mind had already wandered to wanting a woman, and asked if that made him a hopeless case. Everyone roared with laughter. I told him wanting companionship was the most natural thing in the world. Then I made a promise. If we survived and put down roots in Huang Province, we'd build it into a place where everyone could eat their fill, wear warm clothes, and find a wife. A real home. Old Ghost's eyes lit up like fire, and he said that was exactly the dream worth fighting for. Then he jumped to his feet, suddenly serious, and asked the question that had been hanging over all of us. How are we going to fight tonight's battle? Old Ghost questioned whether my unusual defense plan would actually work, but Lu Shu shut him down. If the prince designed it, it would work. The soldiers laughed, though I could tell they had doubts. Nobody had seen tactics like mine before. Meanwhile, In the back courtyard, Sima Lan's group was struggling badly with something I hadn't expected: cooking. Sima Gu, the deadly assassin bodyguard, had volunteered to be their chef and was failing spectacularly. She burned the beef black, set the cooking oil on fire, then made it worse by throwing water on the grease flames. Sima Lan had to slam a lid on the pot to smother the blaze. Their rice burned into a charred mess too, and the whole inner courtyard filled with smoke. These were elite killers who'd trained since childhood to take lives, but none of them had ever learned to make a meal. I smelled the disaster from outside, and sent Xiao Bai over with bowls of my oil-splashed noodles for everyone, framing it politely. I was just worried they might not be used to cooking outdoors. Sima Lan saw right through the gesture. She told Xiao Bai that a bowl of noodles made personally by a prince was probably the most precious meal in the world, and she understood exactly what I was doing. Feeding someone creates a bond that's hard to break. My soldiers would die for me partly because I cooked for them with my own hands, and now her bodyguards would protect me more wholeheartedly too. She called it a brilliant bowl of noodles. Then she dropped all her noble lady manners and devoured it, because it really was delicious and she was starving. Sima Gu squatted by the door slurping noodles and warned Sima Lan not to fall for a man just because he could cook, since she'd probably end up a widow. Sima Lan flicked her on the forehead and scolded her for eating someone's food while cursing their lifespan. After the meal, I set up a medical station in the main hall, splitting it with a silk curtain for privacy. Old Ghost came in first. I examined the long sword wound across his chest, red, swollen, partly rotting with pus. I'd already studied his injuries twice, during the initial inspection and again during our bath. I explained that the reason his wound kept festering was poison embedded deep inside. The Tianling warriors coated their weapons with a vile mixture: rotting animal fluids, dung, snake venom, rust water, and toxic plant extracts. These substances created a slow infection that wouldn't kill immediately, but would torment a soldier for the rest of his life until the pain eventually destroyed him. Many veterans had survived battle only to die slowly from these untreatable wounds. I heated a long silver needle over a candle flame and told Old Ghost my plan: lance the infection, extract the pus and poison, then apply a healing salve I'd invented myself. His wound would fully recover. He stared at me with desperate hope and asked if I really could do it. I told Old Ghost I could cure him, and I meant it. My medical knowledge came from a lost masterwork called the Qing Nong Jing, written by the legendary Dr. Hua Tuo, the man who invented surgery and anesthesia in my old world. His teachings had been passed down secretly through my family for generations until they reached me. I lanced Old Ghost's infected wound and squeezed out the pus, then discovered the poison had already spread deeper than expected. It was clinging to his chest bone. The Tianling warriors' weapon coatings were vicious stuff, designed to slowly destroy a soldier from the inside over months and years. If I didn't scrape it off now, it would reach his heart and kill him. To steal his nerves, I told him the story of Guan Yu, the ancient warrior who sat drinking wine and playing chess while my master Hua Tuo carved open his arm and scraped poison off the bone without flinching. Old Ghost listened with sweat pouring down his face and asked if there was any way to avoid doing this right now. I told him no. If he fought tonight with the poison still spreading, he'd die for certain. There was no anesthetic available either, because I couldn't find the key ingredients for Hua Tuo's numbing powder in the capital shops. Old Ghost drank a few mouthfuls of liquor, gritted his teeth, and told me to begin. I cut along his wound, reached the bone, and started scraping. His scream shook the building. The grinding sound of blade on bone carried outside, making every soldier in the courtyard shiver. But Old Ghost held perfectly still through willpower alone, blood leaking from his bitten lips, never once thrashing or pulling away. I worked as fast as humanly possible: cut, scrape, stitch, apply medicine, bandage, all in one fluid sequence. When it was done, Old Ghost managed a weak grin and said that with a doctor like me, dying would be hard. I told him his endurance matched Guan Yu's, and I meant it. A man with that kind of iron will was destined for greatness. He was a future general hiding inside a broken soldier's body. In the back courtyard, Sima Lan watched everything from a distance and quietly told Sima Gu that Old Ghost would become famous one day, and that I'd found a diamond in a pile of discarded stones. She wondered aloud how a young prince trapped in a palace library had learned such extraordinary skills, and how many more secrets I was hiding. As darkness fell over the fortress, a column of black-clad riders was already galloping through the snow toward us. While I was inside the fortress treating my soldiers' wounds, the world outside was moving against me. 5 kilometers away in a pine forest, a baby-faced girl called the Second Holy Messenger gathered her team of black-clad killers and fed them dried rations while waiting for nightfall. A scout had already watched our fortress and reported back that our defenses looked sloppy and screams of pain kept coming from inside. They assumed my wounded soldiers were falling apart from the cold. The assassin leader briefed her team. I was a helpless bookworm prince surrounded by crippled soldiers, and killing me would be like stepping on ants. She warned them not to get cocky, though, because Seema Land's bodyguards were skilled fighters. Her plan was simple. The killers would storm the fortress and slaughter my people, while she personally held off the Seema guards. If the Seema fighters stayed out of it, she'd spare them. If not, everyone died, even Seema Lan, despite the crown prince wanting her brought back alive. The attack was set for midnight. Meanwhile, the emperor had sent a team to deliver my royal seal, official robes, and ceremonial equipment, things he'd originally withheld. But the escort commander, a man named Hua Wujian, was deliberately stalling. He'd stopped to eat 3 times in a journey of just a few miles. The eunuch traveling with him was furious, but Hua Wujian shut him up by revealing the truth. Someone powerful had ordered him to delay so that I'd be killed by bandits tonight before the imperial gifts ever reached me. He offered the eunuch a cut of the stolen goods. The terrified eunuch agreed instantly and stopped asking questions. They made camp, planning to collect my corpse in the morning. Hua Wujian was absolutely certain I'd be dead by dawn. At midnight, the moon flickered behind clouds, casting the snowy landscape in shifting shadows. The assassins left their horses tied in the forest and crept toward the fortress on foot. Our walls stood dark and silent, not a single patrol visible, as if everyone inside was fast asleep. The baby-faced killer raised her hand and sent 2 shadows racing toward the walls to climb over and open the gates from inside. I was waiting for them in the darkness. While the assassins thought they were hunting a helpless bookworm, I'd already positioned myself and Gao Fei in the shadows at the base of the fortress wall, faces and hands painted black, wearing black clothes, blending perfectly into the dark patches along the stone. I held a loaded crossbow aimed at the exact spot where any skilled infiltrator would naturally take cover. The first 2 killers came, codenamed Bear 1 and Bear 2, the best stealth operatives among the bronze-tier assassins. Their movement was genuinely impressive, flowing through shadows like ghosts, using terrain like professionals. They slipped into the dark patch at the wall's base feeling completely safe, having already used their trained killer instincts to scan for danger and sense nothing. That's how good my concealment was. I was invisible even to men whose survival depended on detecting threats. The moment they settled into the shadow, they found my crossbow pressed against their throats. Their eyes went wide when they recognized my face even through the black paint. I could read their thoughts. Everything they'd been told about me was a lie. The useless prince, the helpless scholar, the easy target, all wrong. The hunter and the prey had switched places completely. I let them think I was going to capture them alive when I had their mouths stuffed with cloth to keep them quiet. But I wasn't being merciful, I was being efficient. The instant the gags were in place, 2 black daggers shot out of the darkness and punched through their chests, piercing their hearts. They died without making a sound, crumpling into the snow. Gao Fei and I melted back into the shadows. I could feel Gao Fei's shock radiating off him. He'd just watched his prince kill with the precision of someone far deadlier than these professional assassins. I think he realized in that moment that a man who knows exactly how to save a human body also knows exactly where to destroy it. The baby-faced commander waited 15 minutes, then sent 2 more killers, Camel and Cobra, even better than the first pair. These 2 were smarter, approaching from a completely different angle. But I'd anticipated that. When patrol soldiers appeared on the wall carrying torches, the 2 assassins instinctively dove into a nearby snowbank for cover, right where my men were already buried and waiting. Hands clamped over their mouths, blades opened their throats. They bled out silently into the white snow, their bodies swallowed by the drift as if the earth itself had eaten them. The torches went out. The wall went dark again. Silence returned. Out in the field, the remaining assassins were starting to feel something was very wrong. 4 of their best scouts had vanished without a trace, without a sound, without a signal. The snow seemed to be swallowing people alive. An uneasy dread was creeping through their ranks. What was hiding out there in the dark? The baby-faced assassin leader knew something was wrong after losing 4 scouts, but she had no choice. New orders came from the Crown Prince through the first holy messenger demanding my head tonight, or everyone dies. Retreat wasn't an option. She was smart enough to figure out my strategy. She reasoned that if I had enough fighters to destroy her whole team, I would have just let them walk inside and killed them there. The fact that I was picking off scouts in the snow meant I was trying to scare them away because I didn't have the numbers for a real fight. She was partly right, but she underestimated what I did have. She split her killers into 2 groups and sent them charging at the wall and the snow positions where their comrades had disappeared. They threw waves of hidden weapons into the shadows and snowbanks, but all they found were the bodies of their 4 dead scouts, already cold. I'd pulled my people out long before they arrived. The assassins switched to a direct assault on the walls, throwing grappling hooks over the battlements and climbing like monkeys. According to their intelligence, my soldiers only had rusted junk weapons that would snap on contact. A head-on attack against crippled men with broken swords should have been easy. They were wrong about the weapons. The moment they started climbing, Lu Shu gave the order. My soldiers exploded out of snow-covered hiding spots behind the wall's edge, each one holding a loaded crossbow aimed straight down. The assassins screamed warnings to each other, but it was too late. The first volley cut through them. Most managed to dodge or deflect that initial wave. These were trained killers with fast reflexes, and they knew a crossbow only fires once. Except my soldiers, each carried 5 crossbows strapped to their bodies. After the first shot, a second crossbow appeared, then a third, then a fourth. Each volley hammered into the climbing assassins before they could reach the top. Bodies dropped from the wall like rain, arrows buried in chests and throats. Blood painted the stone red. By the 5th round, every single assassin was dead or dying on the ground below, except their leader. The baby-faced girl's eyes burned crimson with fury. She screamed that she'd be back, then launched herself off the ground with a leap that carried her impossibly high and far, like a bird taking flight. She vanished into the snowy darkness in seconds. I watched her go, stunned by that jump. I asked Gao Fei how a human being could possibly leap like that. His face was grim when he answered. She was a 2nd-tier martial artist, and in a one-on-one fight, nobody in our entire company could match her. I realized then that this world had a martial arts ranking system I knew nothing about, and I asked him to explain what a 2nd-tier warrior actually was. After the battle, Gao Fei explained the martial arts system of this world to me. Warriors who cultivate internal energy, a force called true qi, are ranked in 3 tiers. 3rd-tier fighters can beat 10 elite soldiers and serve as squad leaders. 2nd-tier fighters can take on 100 soldiers and lead battalions. 1st-tier fighters match 1,000 soldiers and can become generals. Above all of them are grandmasters, each one worth 10,000 soldiers, true one-man armies. Only 3 grandmasters existed on the entire continent. Long and Ition, the old eunuch who served my father in the palace and who I'd already met without knowing what he was. Ouyang Du, the national priest of the Tianlang Empire, and Lu Yunyun, the only female empress in the world, ruler of the fairy kingdom. Gao Fei assessed my combat skills honestly. Even without internal energy, my natural superhuman strength combined with my mastery of stealth, concealment, and killing techniques put me at least at 2nd-tier level. He and Lu Shu were both 3rd-tier warriors, while Sima Gu was something stronger that he couldn't read clearly. The assassins I'd killed tonight were also 3rd tier, but trained for assassination rather than battlefield combat. Lu Shu brought the soldiers down from the walls, practically glowing with admiration. Everything had gone exactly as I'd planned. My saying about martial arts meaning nothing against a rain of arrows had proven perfectly true. He asked if we should chase the escaped leader. I said no. Pursuing a wounded predator with injured soldiers would get us picked apart. Instead, I ordered them to strip every dead assassin clean and collect all weapons, money, and equipment. The haul was enormous. These killers carried fortunes on their bodies, silver notes worth thousands of taels, quality weapons, and expensive gear. My soldiers were giddy, though they followed the new rule I'd set. All captured goods go into the common treasury, no private looting. They trusted I'd use the money wisely. Lu Shu and Gao Fei understood the bigger picture. Armies devour gold. And as the poorest prince in the empire, every coin mattered for our survival. While everyone was busy counting loot, I slipped away quietly. The baby-faced assassin leader had escaped into the snow using her second-tier movement technique, leaping impossibly far with each stride. But eventually her internal energy ran out, and she slowed down. She sensed me following and spun around, demanding I show myself. I chased the baby-faced assassin leader into the pine forest where her team had left their horses. She sensed me, but couldn't find me. I stayed hidden in the trees above, while she threw copper coins as projectiles into the shadows and slashed at empty air. I'd spent my previous life mastering stealth techniques that went far beyond what this world's killers could detect. Even the warhorses could feel my presence before she could, and they panicked. When she drew her hidden soft-blade sword from her belt and stabbed upward, I was already dropping from the canopy. I grabbed both her wrists with my bare hands and squeezed with my full natural strength until her bones felt like they were about to shatter. Her sword and coins fell into the snow. Then I felt something extraordinary for the first time. Her internal energy, the true chi that Gao Fei had described. It surged through her wrist veins like hot iron rods, and the force actually broke my grip open. She was thrilled, mocking me for being just a strong body without any cultivation. She swung a chi-enhanced hand blade at my neck that could have cut through me like steel. But my body's coordination and reflexes from my past life let me dodge it cleanly, which shocked her. A non-cultivator shouldn't be able to evade a second-tier attack. That hand strike used up her last drop of energy. She was empty. I slipped behind her like a python, locked her arms and legs with my full body weight, and slammed her to the ground. She screamed in pain she'd never experienced before. When struggling failed, she switched to seduction, going soft, calling me, my lord, promising to serve me forever if I spared her. I loosened my grip slightly, playing along. She thought she'd won. Beneath her tongue, she had a hidden razor blade, trained to flip out and slash a throat faster than a snake bite. The moment I released her a fraction more, she whipped her head around to kill me. But I'd been waiting for exactly that move. I grabbed her head with both hands and twisted. The blade fell harmlessly away, and her neck snapped. As she died, she saw my face and seemed to wonder whether I'd ever been with a woman, since her beauty trick hadn't worked at all. She vanished into darkness with that final puzzled thought. I stood up, arms shaking. If I tried fighting her while she still had any chi left, I would have lost. Internal energy was genuinely terrifying, and I needed to find a way to cultivate it myself, which I was close to achieving. I searched her body and found a gold token engraved with the number 2, confirming her rank as the second holy messenger, plus 3,000 taels in silver notes. I also found a red silk undergarment, which I threw away immediately. Then I walked toward the horses with a grin on my face. These were Tianling Empire warhorses, the finest cavalry mounts on the continent, battle-hardened and fearless. The assassins had brought them right to my doorstep. My future cavalry finally had horses worthy of them. Just as I was savoring the moment, a shadowy figure appeared out of nowhere directly in front of me. A veiled woman appeared before me in the pine forest, only her eyes visible, sharp phoenix eyes with a warrior's spirit. Her body left no footprints in the snow. I recognized the technique instantly, treading snow without a trace, a legendary movement art. Her power was beyond anything I'd encountered tonight. I asked her to take me as a student. She wasn't surprised, but she refused. She said I'd missed the ideal age for martial cultivation. My bones and meridians were already set, limiting my potential. Her school taught internal energy arts, which wouldn't suit me. She recommended external body-hardening techniques instead. What she didn't know was that I carried 2 legendary training manuals in my memory from my old world. The Erda Tendon Changing Classic for rebuilding meridians and bone structure, and the Marrow Washing Classic for cultivating the most dominating form of internal energy. Together, they could overcome every limitation she described. A mythical monk had once mastered both and become invincible. She told me she'd visited all 9 of the Emperor's sons to evaluate them. She wouldn't explain why, only saying I'd learn her identity and her reasons if I survived the journey to Huang Province. When I pressed whether she was friend or enemy, she answered, both. She gave only a single name, Lan, then vanished into the forest without leaving a trace. Lu Shu, Gao Fei, and the soldiers found me moments later, followed by Sima Gu, who spotted the dead assassin leader and examined the body. She noted dryly that I'd shattered the woman's neck bones and called me a heartless man for showing no mercy to a beautiful girl. I ignored the comment and ordered the horses collected. Dozens of premium Tianlang war horses, exactly what my future cavalry needed. Back at the fortress, Lu Shu reported that all captured loot had been gathered and was waiting for my inspection. I asked how much we'd gained. In the back courtyard, Sima Lan and Sima Gu were puzzling over how I'd killed a second-tier martial artist without having any internal energy. Sima Lan guessed a mysterious third person must have been there, someone powerful enough to leave no footprints in snow, possibly Grandmaster level. She had more questions than answers about me, but decided she'd rather wait than ask, saying if I wanted to share my secrets, I would. She called me her most interesting fiancé yet. I supervised the inventory of everything we'd taken from the dead assassins. The haul was impressive. 1,000 taels in gold notes, 30,000 in silver, 100 quality swords and sabers, and 10 sets of soft armor. But the real treasure was the 100 warhorses tied up in the pine forest. These were Tianlang Empire blood-sweating stallions, the finest cavalry mounts on the continent. Each one was worth 1,000 silver taels on the open market, double that on the black market. 100 horses meant a fortune of at least 100,000 taels. The Crown Prince had unknowingly funded my entire military buildup by sending assassins who rode the best horses money couldn't buy. Still, I reminded everyone that building Huang Province into something livable would cost astronomical amounts, so this was just a start. That's when Old Ghost had himself carried in on a stretcher to share something personal. His parents had been bandits, the honorable kind who only robbed corrupt rich men. When their targets dried up, they disbanded and came down from the mountain, only to be murdered by real criminals who took over their fortress on Tiger Mountain in Menghu County, 200 miles from Huang Province on our exact route. Over 20 years, those killers had built a criminal empire, becoming the headquarters of the entire regional underworld and hoarding massive wealth from decades of robbery and murder. Old Ghost's real point wasn't revenge, it was business. He was telling me that the bandit strongholds along our road were sitting on fortunes. With our new war horses, we could raid them as we traveled, training our soldiers in real combat, while filling our treasury at the same time. Lu Shu, Gao Fei, and I all looked at each other and burst out laughing. We'd been thinking the exact same thing. Then a one-eyed soldier ran in with unexpected news. Someone was at the fortress gate asking to see me. She called herself Hidden Dragon. The mysterious veiled woman from the pine forest reappeared at our gate, and this time she brought a gift. She tossed me a golden token carved with a dragon, a Hidden Dragon Society medallion. Behind her stood a group of teenagers, maybe 40 or 50 of them, around 14 or 15 years old. They were skin and bones, wearing thin clothes despite the freezing cold, each carrying a large bundle on their backs. The woman said someone had asked her to deliver these children to me, then vanished before I could ask anything more, leaving only the words, "We'll meet again in Huang Province." Then Xiaobai revealed something I hadn't expected. He handed me a roster, a complete list of these orphans with their backgrounds. He knew about the Hidden Dragon Society and had been planted in the palace specifically to serve me, arranged by my mother. He wasn't a member of the society himself, but he'd been my mother's agent all along. I looked at his beardless face, his lack of an Adam's apple, his girlish smile, and felt a pang of guilt. He'd been castrated as a child and sent into the palace just so he could one day serve me. He insisted it was his own choice and deflected my questions about his real identity with a playful grin. These orphans were the children of Hidden Dragon Society members who died fighting the Xia dynasty. They had nowhere else to go, and only I could protect them. I ordered Lu Shu and Xiaobai to verify each child against the roster, questioning them about their parents and backgrounds to catch any spies who might have been planted among them. Lu Shu and Gao Fei weren't bothered by my connection to the society. They figured the more power I had, the better their own chances of survival. If the Crown Prince ever became emperor, They were dead men anyway. So what did it matter if my allies were technically anti-government? Gao Fei noticed something strange about the teenagers. They were shivering violently in the cold, yet their bundles clearly contained warm cotton clothes. He couldn't understand why they'd freeze themselves on purpose instead of putting on their coats. Gao Fei couldn't figure out why the teenagers were so valuable. I told him to look closer. When he did, he finally saw it. Beneath their shivering, starving appearance, these kids had eagle-sharp eyes, coiled muscles, and a predator's tension hiding in every limb. They were like sheathed swords, their killing edge invisible unless you knew what to look for. Gao Fei recognized them from old legends, hidden sword death warriors, trained using an ancient method. Sima Lan arrived and confirmed it, explaining the 3 tiers of death warriors to me. The lowest kind serve out of fear or greed. The second kind, like her family's guards, are raised from childhood with loyalty bred into them. But the third kind, the hidden sword, are something else entirely. From birth, they're told their only purpose is to die for their master. They accept this as naturally as breathing. Their souls belong to their master before they ever learn to walk. As they grow, they're trained to excel in everything. Scholarship sharp enough to pass imperial exams, combat skills worthy of martial arts prodigies, and practical trades like farming so. They can assume any identity for a mission. Each one must become the absolute best in at least one field before they're considered worth the enormous resources poured into their development. The reason they weren't wearing their warm clothes in the freezing cold was part of their training. They called it crossing the cold tribulation. Surviving extreme cold without protection hardened their bodies and forged unbreakable willpower. If they didn't die from it, cold would never kill them in the future. Sima Lan said she'd never witnessed this training firsthand and found it genuinely awe-inspiring. She congratulated me seriously. 100 future hidden sword warriors was an almost unimaginable gift. There was a saying on this continent, 10,000 slaves are easy to find, but one hidden sword is priceless. Once these teenagers completed their training and grew into full strength, she said, the whole world would tremble before me. Lu Shu finished verifying all 100 against the roster. Every identity checked out, no spies. The teenagers looked at me once, burned my face into their memories, then dropped to one knee in the snow and declared together, we greet the young master. By the old master's command, we come to die for you. Their voices shook snow off the surrounding peach trees. Sima Lan watched with shining eyes and whispered that when hidden swords reveal themselves, the world takes notice. She wondered aloud what the crown prince would try next. I looked toward the palace and silently promised my mother I'd come back for her. These 100 hidden sword teenagers were her life's work, the entire foundation of the Hidden Dragon Society, handed to me so I could build something real. Her love was selfless and total. The leader, a cold-faced boy called Zhang Yi, addressed me as Master instead of Young Master, explaining that from the moment they saw me, my mother's orders transferred fully. They answered to me alone now, lived for me alone, and would die for me alone. I tested him by asking what he'd do if I ordered him to die right now. Without hesitation, he produced a packet of instant kill poison. I said no poison. The poison vanished and a short sword appeared, an ancient blade called Blood Dragon, covered in perfect hammer-scale patterns showing masterful craftsmanship. He offered to cut his own throat. I took the sword to examine it, then handed it back and asked if he had other methods. He pulled out a beast tendon rope for hanging, then calmly listed biting his tongue, smashing his head against a wall, jumping off a cliff, and stabbing himself with a tree branch. He was completely serious about every option. I'd heard enough. I told him and all 100 of them that without my direct order, dying was forbidden. They had to live. Zhang Yi responded flatly that his only purpose in living was to die for me. There was zero emotion in his voice. He was like a puppet made of flesh. The way their minds had been shaped from birth was genuinely disturbing. I gave the order as a command they couldn't refuse, and something subtle shifted. When they looked up at me, there was a faint warmth stirring in their chests that they clearly didn't understand. Their old master had raised them to die well. I was the first person who'd ever told them to live. For the first time in their existence, these children felt confused about whether life and death were really that simple. I learned that Zhang Yi's specialty was forging. He'd been trained by an ancient sword-smithing lineage and could craft any weapon or tool from blueprints. The reason they were freezing in thin clothes was their 10-day extreme cold endurance trial. Their training masters had actually died during this exercise when a historic blizzard hit. The old men's bodies couldn't handle it, but these teenagers survived because their willpower burned hotter and their blood ran stronger. Zhang Yi reported this without a flicker of emotion, as if death meant nothing at all. I ordered Xiao Bai to supply them with whatever resources their training required, and told Lu Shu to organize them as a separate 100-man unit within my personal guard, under my direct command with Zhang Yi as captain. Sima Lan had watched the entire exchange quietly and finally turned to Sima Gu, asking how these hidden sword warriors compared to her own family's elite guards. Sima Gu admitted to Sima Lan that while these hidden sword teenagers were currently weaker than her guards, once they broke through into internal energy cultivation, they'd surpass everyone. She revealed they'd been deliberately holding back from that breakthrough, enduring extreme physical training to push their bodies to the absolute limit first. So when they finally cultivated true qi, their growth would be explosive. Their target wasn't just becoming strong fighters. Their target was Grandmaster. Sima Lan decided to keep the hidden sword warriors secret, even from her own father. She understood they were my hidden card, and surprise was their greatest value. She ordered her people sealed under a gag order and personally dealt with 2 of her father's informants among her staff. When she asked if I'd posted crossbowmen outside the fortress to prevent anyone from leaving to leak information, I didn't confirm it directly. She smiled and said she'd have done the same thing. I told her that someday she'd manage my household affairs, and I'd trust her completely. Her face flushed, and she walked away without answering, but I caught the slight stumble in her step. At dawn, we left the fortress, and I launched my bandit clearing campaign. I sent Gao Fei ahead with 10 riders to scout enemy positions along our route, while Lu Shu would plan each attack based on the intelligence. We'd fight our way to Huang Province, training soldiers and filling our treasury with every stronghold we crushed. Behind us, the Imperial escort arrived at our abandoned fortress. Commander Hua Wujian, the Crown Prince's man who deliberately stalled all night, rode in expecting to find our corpses. Instead, he found 100 dead assassins hanging frozen from the watchtowers like black icicles. His confident smirk collapsed into horror. He couldn't understand how wounded soldiers had annihilated 100 elite killers. The eunuch Gao threatened him, but Hua Wujian recovered quickly. He revealed he served the Crown Prince directly and insisted we'd never survive what waited ahead, some terrible trap far worse than last night's assassination attempt. He convinced the eunuch to keep following our trail at a distance, waiting for us to die so they could steal the imperial gifts meant for me. He was absolutely certain the next ambush would kill me, and nothing could change his mind. Behind us, Hua Wujian and the eunuch found the fortress full of frozen assassin corpses and panicked, but Hua Wujian convinced himself it didn't matter. Whatever trap the Crown Prince had set further down the road would kill me for certain. Even a Grandmaster couldn't survive it. They toasted with the Crown Prince's wine and sent scouts to track my convoy, planning to collect my body and steal the imperial gifts once I was dead. Back in the capital, Prime Minister Sima Jian received reports about what happened at Peach Blossom Fortress. His investigators found the assassin bodies covered in arrow wounds, blade cuts, and burns, deliberately mutilated so nobody could determine the real cause of death or identify what weapons I'd used. His spies embedded in Sima Lan's escort had gone silent too, clearly gagged on her orders. Sima Jin pieced it together. I possessed some secret weapon capable of killing trained martial artists, and I'd convinced his daughter to help me hide it. Instead of being angry, he was fascinated. The question eating at him was how 100 crippled soldiers had wiped out a squad of elite third-tier killers. Meanwhile, the Hidden Dragon Society strategists were already making moves on my behalf without my knowledge. They'd started spreading rumors across the capital that the other 7 princes were secretly building armies and eyeing the throne, deliberately shifting the court's attention away from me and onto my brothers. Sima, Jin's eldest daughter, Sima Mei, his legitimate firstborn and the woman the Crown Prince wanted as his official wife, came to her father's study and flatly refused to marry the Crown Prince. She'd heard about him wedding himself and doubted he'd ever actually become emperor. When her father shared my 4 great vows with her, the words hit her like a thunderbolt. She called me a saint-like figure and said she desperately wanted to meet me. Then her internal energy burst from her body, revealing she was a hidden martial arts powerhouse, and she declared she wanted to go protect her younger sister. While I was on the road clearing bandits, I had no idea how many people were scrambling to figure out what happened at Peach Blossom Fortress. Back at the Sima mansion, the Prime Minister's eldest daughter, Sima Mei, the legitimate firstborn the Crown Prince wanted as his main wife, broke through to a new martial arts level right in her father's study. She demanded to go protect her sister instead of marrying the Crown Prince, calling him a coward and a tool user who only wanted the Sima women for their beauty and political power. Her father pretended to refuse, but secretly ordered his hidden guards to let her leave and keep her safe. She left a note saying she wanted to see the world, and Sima Jian had it spread across the entire capital within the hour, giving himself political cover by making it look like a rebellious daughter rather than a calculated move. In the palace, my father interrogated his old eunuch about my journey. The emperor's own spy network, the Imperial City Bureau, had been completely neutralized. Their agents at the city gate were knocked unconscious before they could follow me, and their watchers outside the fortress were killed during the night. So my father was blind to what actually happened. All his people found afterward were 100 mutilated assassin corpses. He was genuinely surprised that I'd won, and couldn't understand how. But instead of being angry at me, he turned his fury on the Crown Prince, not for trying to kill me, but for daring to attack Imperial spies and blind the Emperor's own intelligence network. He ordered the Crown Prince confined to his residence under house arrest, using a convenient excuse about mishandling snow disaster relief. The old eunuch couldn't understand why the Emperor would restrain the Crown Prince right when the assassination campaign was underway. But my father muttered something revealing to himself. The bait couldn't die yet, because big fish were starting to bite. I was his lure, dangled to draw out hidden enemies, and apparently it was working. At the Crown Prince's palace, he was smashing everything in sight, screaming about how 100 martial artists lost to 100 cripples. His mysterious female commander, the Grand Holy Messenger, appeared and calmed him down, promising that the next trap along my route was inescapable. When he asked what would happen if she failed again, she offered her own body as the wager. She swore this time I was finished. The capital erupted with 3 hot rumors overnight. First, the Crown Prince got confined to his palace for bungling snow disaster relief, though everyone whispered the real reason was something else. Second, all 7 other princes were secretly building armies in their territories, eyeing the throne. Third, Sima Mei, the Prime Minister's eldest daughter and the Crown Prince's intended bride, ran away from home with a single devastating line. "The world is so big, I want to go see it." She instantly became an icon for every noblewoman trapped behind mansion walls, though the gossips also branded her a disgrace unfit to be a future empress, which was exactly what her father wanted. The Crown Prince completely lost his mind. Locked inside his palace, he smashed everything in sight, screaming about why his father would ground him right when the assassination campaign was at its peak. When he heard Sima Mei had fled, he went truly unhinged, raging that I'd stolen one sister and now the other was running too. He beat a serving girl to death with a single blow to the skull, howling that he'd destroy me no matter what. Meanwhile, I was inside a converted surgery wagon, working through my soldiers one by one. I'd rigged 3 carts, 1 operating room, 2 recovery beds. I cut open each infected wound, drained the poisoned blood, packed them with herbal medicine, and bandaged them tight. Old Ghost's case had been the worst. The rest were more manageable. By midday, I'd operated on 50 men, leaving only half my force combat ready. Sima Lan understood exactly why I couldn't wait. She told Sima Gu it wasn't about winning loyalty. I simply couldn't watch my own people suffer when I had the skills to help them now. And strategically, healing them during the journey meant they'd arrive in Huang province at full strength, ready for the real war. The mood in the convoy stayed light despite everything. The soldiers joked about my heavy hands while I squeezed poison from their wounds, their screams turning into competitive banter about who could yell the loudest. Even the stone-faced, hidden-sword teenagers cracked slight smiles. Then Lu Shu rode up quietly and warned me. Scouts from multiple factions were shadowing us on both flanks and behind. He asked if we should kill them. Before I could answer, I sneezed 3 times in a row. I told him the old superstition. 1 sneeze means someone's cursing you. 2 means someone's thinking of you. 3 means someone wants you dead. I ordered everyone on high alert. Right then, a white blur shot through the snowy landscape and started cutting down the spies surrounding our convoy. Blood splashed across the white ground. The killing intent closing in on us was becoming impossible to ignore. The mysterious white-robed woman from the pine forest appeared again, this time silently shadowing my convoy, cutting down every spy trailing us. She moved like a ghost across the snow, killing scouts from multiple factions with single sword strikes, including 2 Imperial City Bureau agents who flashed their gold badges and threatened her with the Emperor's authority. She didn't care. She told their corpses that only the Grandmasters in the palace's offering hall could make her think twice. After clearing every watcher, she threw a dart with a note attached toward my surgery wagon and disappeared. Zhang Yi caught the dart between 2 fingers without even looking, checked it for poison, then handed me the paper. 2 of his brothers, Zhang Er and Zhang San, had been hiding in the snow using a breathing suspension technique so advanced that even the white-robed woman hadn't detected them. They'd watched everything. Zhang Yi had them both draw her portrait simultaneously, explaining that 2 observers reduce visual error and produce a more accurate likeness. Their hands were perfectly steady despite the bouncing wagon. The drawings matched almost exactly. I was impressed. These hidden sword warriors operated with a level of precision I hadn't expected from teenagers. Zhang Yi analyzed the woman's skill level without having seen the fight himself. He'd counted 3 second-tier martial artists among the spies before we departed, and since she'd killed them all instantly, she had to be at least first tier. When I asked why she was helping us, he considered several possibilities and concluded she probably wasn't protecting me at all, but ensuring Sima Land's safety. The note said there was a deadly trap ahead and wished me luck. No signature. Then Zhang Yi revealed a depth I hadn't suspected. When scouts reported a bandit fortress 50 miles ahead, loaded with treasure and holding a kidnapped woman, I asked what strategic value our bandit clearing campaign had, beyond training and money. Without hesitation, he answered that it would build our reputation as righteous protectors across every mile we traveled, winning the hearts of common people. If my ambition reached for the whole empire, we should walk the whole empire and earn every heart along the way. I stared at this expressionless boy and asked what else he could do besides forge weapons. He answered my question with a question. Had I ever heard of the 100 schools of ancient philosophy? My eyes lit up. I asked which school had trained him. Zhang Yi told me he was trained in the School of Military Strategy, one of the ancient 100 schools of philosophy. He'd figured out my medical skills came from a lost tradition too, and he knew that when the Xia dynasty overthrew the previous Qin dynasty, the emperor had seized all the 100 schools' texts and locked them in the palace library. He also revealed something darker. The emperor had imprisoned the founders of the 100 schools inside the palace's mysterious offering hall, trying to combine their wisdom to create an immortality elixir. Some of these founders were over 150 years old, kept alive by methods nobody outside the palace understood. And whatever guards the emperor used to capture them had overpowered even grandmaster-level fighters with ease, suggesting forces inside that hall far beyond anything the outside world knew about. Then Zhang Yi dropped the real bombshell. Each of the 100 hidden sword teenagers had been trained in a different school of the 100 schools. Zhang Yi learned military strategy. Zhang Er mastered the agricultural school, farming, land development, crop science. Zhang San studied Taoism, philosophy, medicine, and most importantly for my plans, alchemy. The rest covered law, engineering, diplomacy, philosophy, and dozens of other disciplines. Every single one was both a martial arts prodigy and an academic specialist. My mind raced through the possibilities. With Zhang Yi and my knowledge of Sun Tzu's art of war, I could build brilliant commanders. With Zhang Er and modern agricultural techniques from my old world, I could turn Huang Province's wasteland into productive farmland. With Zhang San's alchemical training, I could develop gunpowder, a weapon that didn't exist in this world yet. In an era where Tianling cavalry dominated every battlefield, firearms would change everything. These teenagers were blank canvases I could paint masterpieces on, combining their ancient foundations with knowledge from 5,000 years of civilization they'd never imagined. I laughed out loud, realizing how perfectly this had played out. My father had refused to let me recruit talent in the capital, hoping to flush out my mother's hidden allies. But instead of sending me aging loyalists who'd be easy to identify and eliminate, my mother had given me 100 young geniuses disguised as orphans, invisible, untraceable, and infinitely more valuable. I told Zhang we'd recruit ordinary young men along the way as cover, mixing them with the hidden sword warriors so no one could tell which was which. He grasped the principle immediately: military deception, making the real look fake and the fake look real. Then Gao Fei rode up and reported that the bandit fortress on Two Dragon Mountain lay ahead. This was the third time his scouts had spotted bandits attacking wealthy travelers and kidnapping beautiful women on the same stretch of road. Obviously staged traps designed to lure me in. I asked about the kidnapped women's looks. Gao Fei said they were stunning. I laughed and ordered him to charge in. But instead of playing the noble rescuer, he rode up to the robbery scene and shouted that we'd split the loot and the women with the bandits, or kill everyone. The entire scene froze. Bandits and victims alike stared in total confusion. Nobody could figure out whether we were the prince's army or rival criminals. The script had just been thrown out the window. The fat bandit leader, Dragon Bao, played his role perfectly, pretending not to recognize Gao Fei as a soldier, accusing him of being a rival criminal trying to steal their score. The whole robbery scene was staged bait. A pretty girl in a pink dress screamed and cried for help, while Dragon Bao threw her over his shoulder and made the most disgusting threats imaginable, trying to push every button that would make a noble-born prince charge in blindly. I knew exactly what they wanted. Their intelligence said I was a sheltered 16-year-old who'd never seen the real world, and that my guards were hot-blooded fools who'd rush into any fight. They figured a prince could never stomach watching a beautiful woman get dragged away by filthy bandits. They were right about one thing: I couldn't, but not for the reason they expected. The real trap wasn't on the road. Sima Gu guessed they wanted to lure my soldiers into the mountains for an ambush. Sima Lan wasn't so sure. She studied the terrain around us with careful eyes, sensing something else. I'd already given her team shields I'd prepared before we left, and Lu Shu rode back to warn her to get ready for a fight. On a hilltop nearby, the white-robed woman who'd been protecting us was locked in combat with a terrifying fighter called Silver Death, a black-clad killer with eagle-claw hands and decades of murder behind her. Silver Death had been sent to kill me personally, and the mysterious woman was blocking her path. They clashed palm against claw, neither gaining advantage, buying me time. I gave the order. Gao Fei charged after the bandits with most of my cavalry, screaming threats so crude that even the bandits were offended. They chased Dragon Bao's men toward the mountain pass, exactly what the enemy wanted. My convoy sat nearly defenseless on the open road, guarded by just Lu Shu and 10 soldiers. But my hidden sword teenagers had vanished into thin air the instant the cavalry left, disappearing so completely it was as if they'd never existed. The whole convoy sat perfectly still on the snow-covered road, quiet and exposed, waiting. Gao Fei chased the bandits into a gourd-shaped valley with only one entrance, exactly the kind of place designed for a close the door and beat the dog ambush. The moment my cavalry charged inside, 300 bandits were waiting, and 2 more groups sealed the exit behind us. Their leader sat on horseback covered in scars, grinning like he'd already won. The pink-dressed girl dropped her helpless act and started talking about wanting to sleep with me before they killed me. These people were all working for the crown prince. Dozens of bandit archers raised poisoned arrows at my cavalry. It looked hopeless. Then the hidden sword teenagers appeared. They'd been hiding right next to the archers the entire time, buried in the snow, invisible, breathing so slowly they seemed dead. Snow erupted around every bowman simultaneously, and before anyone could react, sword blades flashed through the white fog and sliced every archer's throat in one stroke. The bandits' formation shattered instantly. Some of them screamed that these were snow demons, not human beings, because no person could have hidden that close without being detected. 3 hidden sword teenagers locked down the bandit leaders using a sword formation that held them trapped despite having no internal energy. The pink-dressed woman couldn't believe teenagers without true chi could withstand her attacks. Then Gao Fei's cavalry smashed through like a tidal wave. The bandit chief was cut in half and trampled into red mud under the war horses. Dragon Bao and the pink-dressed woman were split apart by cavalry sabers. Every bandit who ran into the forest was hunted down by the hidden sword teenagers, who moved through the trees like ghosts. Not one survived. A bandit begged for his life, offering to reveal the treasure vault's location, and my soldier took his head mid-sentence. I'd ordered no survivors, and we'd find the treasure ourselves. But all of that was the distraction, not the real attack. Back on the road, while my cavalry was deep inside the valley, white-clothed assassins exploded out of the snow around my convoy. They wore white cloaks for camouflage and carried crossbows loaded with blue glowing poison bolts, the kind that kill on contact with blood. 50 bolts aimed at my white medical wagon. Their leader screamed that this was revenge for the second holy messenger I'd killed, and ordered them to fire. The arrows flew. Zhang Yi threw himself into my wagon, shouting a warning, just as 50 poison bolts ripped through the white canvas. The arrows punched through like blue glowing snakes, and the sound of metal hitting flesh and blood splattering against fabric filled the air. From outside, my wagon looked like a slaughterhouse, red blossoms spreading across the white cloth. Sima Gu panicked and told Sima Lan I'd been turned into a pincushion. Sima Lan just smiled and said I wasn't that easy to kill. Sima Gu couldn't understand how her mistress could be so calm when blood was visibly spraying inside my cart. What she didn't know was that I'd prepared for exactly this moment back at Peach Blossom Fortress. I'd built shields and mounted them inside the wagon, then attached bags filled with the dead assassin's blood to the outside. The same reason I'd ordered their corpses mutilated beyond recognition, to hide the fact that I'd drained their blood for this trick. When the arrows hit, they punctured the blood bags, creating a perfect illusion of a massacre inside the cart. Zhang Yi and I stood untouched between the shields, not a scratch on either of us. The silver-tier assassins, every one of them a second-tier martial artist, far above the bronze-tier killers from the first night, saw the blood and relaxed. Mission accomplished, they thought. That single moment of relief was what I'd been counting on. The remaining 50 hidden sword teenagers had been buried in the snow directly beneath the assassins' landing spots, breathing so slowly they registered as dead earth. The instant the killers let their guard down and leaped forward, the snow exploded beneath them. Swords flashed upward into bodies that were midair, unable to dodge, caught between one breath and the next. The assassins recognized the ancient hidden sword technique and screamed warnings to each other. They realized these teenagers hadn't broken through to internal energy cultivation yet, so their swords carried no chi, meaning a second-tier warrior could harden muscles around the blade and avoid fatal damage, then counterattack. They were right. The swords pierced skin and muscle but missed every vital organ as the assassins twisted their bodies with trained precision. They were already gathering power for killing blows, grinning internally, certain they'd turn the tables in the next heartbeat. That's when I gave the command from inside the wagon. Breakthrough. One word changed everything. Every hidden sword teenager simultaneously shattered the barrier they'd been holding back for years. Foul blood erupted from the tops of their skulls as their meridians blew open and true chi flooded through bodies that had been refined to absolute physical perfection. Internal energy surged down their arms and into their swords, swords that were already buried inside the assassin's flesh. The silver-tier killers' faces twisted in horror. The blades that had been stopped by their chi-hardened muscles now cut through everything like heated wire through snow. Limbs separated from bodies. Blood fountained across the white landscape. The assassins screamed, sounds I'd never heard from professional killers before, raw and animal, like wolves being castrated alive. Their bodies lost all coordination as the pain overwhelmed their ability to channel chi. Then came the final stroke, a clean slash across each throat, precise and identical, ending 50 lives in near-perfect unison. The hidden sword teenagers stood silently over the corpses, already searching pockets and collecting weapons without being told. Xiaobai hopped out of a supply cart with a delighted expression and started organizing the loot collection. The soldiers cheered. These silver-tier assassins carried even more wealth than last night's batch. The teenagers returned to my wagon, now radiating the unmistakable pressure of true martial artists. They'd entered the ranks of real warriors in the span of a single breath, their foundation so perfectly laid that their first moment of cultivation had produced devastating results. I blasted the ruined canvas off the wagon with a pulse of force, revealing myself and Zhang Yi standing perfectly unharmed among arrow-studded shields dripping with decoy blood. Zhang Yi looked at me with something I'd never seen on his face before, genuine admiration. He confirmed the first trap had been neutralized with 0 casualties on our side, exactly as I predicted, and asked whether to proceed with the next phase of my battle plan. I told him yes, but first we'd raid 2 Dragon Mountains fortress and see what treasures those bandits had been hoarding. The hidden sword teenagers looked toward the distant peak with something almost resembling curiosity, wondering what waited inside, whether there'd be treasure, captive women, or yet another trap hiding behind the first. After the battle, Sima Lan came to check on me. She looked at the blood streaming down my wagon and asked if I was hurt. I smiled and told her I was completely fine. Relief washed over her face, and she gave me a smile so warm it made my chest tighten. This girl knew how to care about someone without making a fuss about it. I could see her eyes moving across the hidden sword teenagers, burning with curiosity about how they'd hidden inside the snow right next to trained killers without being detected. But she never asked. She understood that their techniques were my secret weapon, and every person who didn't know about them extended how long I could use that advantage. I respected her more for keeping her mouth shut than I would have for any clever question. I handed her a map of our travel route to Huang Province and asked her to study it and point out anything she thought was wrong. Her eyes lit up. She knew I was beginning to trust her, but she was also smart enough to suspect I might have hidden a test inside. The map. She took it with a graceful bow and headed back to her carriage, already planning to tear it apart looking for whatever puzzle I'd buried in it. Then something unexpected happened. Sima Gu, who'd been following her mistress, turned around on her own, walked back to me, and gave me a formal bow, the first time she'd ever done that without being prompted. She looked me straight in the eye for a long moment, then turned and walked away with her chest held high. I wasn't sure what had changed between us, but something definitely had. Gao Fei brought the cavalry and hidden sword teenagers back from the valley. Every bandit was dead. We'd taken only 3 minor wounds, shallow cuts on legs and arms, nothing serious. I checked them personally, and they really were just scratches. The soldiers laughed and said the blood covering them belonged to the bandits, not them. That's when a small figure stepped out of the hidden sword formation. A skinny girl, maybe 13 or 14, with sharp eyes and a shy way of standing. She introduced herself as Zhang Jiao, number 9, and said she'd studied the medical school's arts as her secondary discipline. She asked permission to treat the wounded instead of me, saying these minor injuries didn't require my personal attention. I told her to go ahead and show me what she could do. She wiped the blood off her face, cleaned her hands thoroughly with snow, then treated the wounds using the exact same sequence I used: alcohol disinfection, medicinal paste, clean bandage wrapping. She'd been watching me work and had already adopted my methods over her own school's techniques. When I asked why, she explained with startling clarity that the medical school's traditional approach lacked my disinfection step, which caused infections and recurring complications. She'd concluded that my medical knowledge surpassed the medical school's established practices, so she'd switched to my methods for treating comrades. This tiny girl, skin stretched over bones from her brutal training, spoke with the analytical precision of a seasoned physician. The other hidden sword teenagers watched her with soft eyes. She was clearly the baby of the group, the one everyone protected. I asked if she wanted to formally study medicine under me. She dropped to her knees so fast I almost didn't catch her, calling me Master, with genuine excitement burning through her usual hidden sword composure. I pulled her up gently. She weighed almost nothing. She attached herself to my side like a shadow after that, and I could see the other teenagers watching with quiet envy. Since the hidden sword warriors had broken through to true chi cultivation during the battle, their cold endurance trial was officially complete. I ordered them into the roadside forest to change into warm clothes and eat a proper meal before we went up the mountain to raid 2 Dragon Mountains fortress. Sima Lan's carriage passed me as the convoy started moving. She leaned out and told me to be careful. I asked her to guard our supply train. Everything we owned was in those carts. She blushed slightly and made me a promise. As long as I stayed alive, the convoy would never be lost. Up on a distant hilltop, the black-robed assassin called Silver Death screamed in rage at the white-robed woman who'd been fighting her. But instead of retreating in defeat, Silver Death laughed and said something chilling. This wasn't the end. This was only the beginning. Everyone was still going to die. Then she leaped off the cliff like a giant bird and disappeared, leaving the white-robed woman staring after her, wondering what dark plan Silver Death was hiding. The road ahead was getting more dangerous, not less. But my people believed in me now. 2 victories built on preparation and cunning had given them a confidence that no speech ever could. We were going to Huang Province, and nothing on this road was going to stop us. The convoy kept moving down the road while I took the hidden sword teenagers into the mountains. Xiaobai sat on a supply cart doing the accounts, grinning as he tallied up our latest haul. 3,000 gold taels and 30,000 silver from the dead silver-tier assassins. In this world, 1 gold equals 10 silver, so we'd collected enough to fund operations for a decent stretch. Xiaobai quietly admitted to himself that he almost wished more assassins would come, since every attack we survived made us richer. He clenched his fist and whispered toward the horizon that we'd make it to Huang Province no matter what. Back on the empty road, which the enemy had sealed off in both directions to set up their ambush, 2 of Sima Lan's bodyguards broke away from the convoy and snuck into the forest. They were the Crown Prince's moles inside the Sima household, the same ones Sima Lan had identified earlier. They scrambled to the spots where my hidden sword teenagers had been buried in the snow, frantically digging, trying to uncover the secret of their concealment technique so they could report it to the Eastern Palace and earn rewards. Sima Gu found them. She appeared behind them like a cold wind, fury burning in her eyes. They tried lying, said they'd had stomach trouble, and ducked into the woods. She didn't bother arguing. She told them she'd known about their betrayal since Peach Blossom Fortress. The only reason they'd survived this long was because I had deliberately kept them alive as information channels, feeding them just enough truth to let the Crown Prince's people think they knew my movements, which is exactly how I'd predicted where today's ambush would be. They'd been my unwitting puppets the entire time. Her dagger flashed once across each throat before they could even process what she'd said. As they bled out in the snow, staring at the holes they'd dug, Sima Gu told their corpses they were fools for thinking someone as careful as me would leave real secrets buried where anyone could find them. She walked away with a tight jaw. Killing enemies was easy, but cleaning traitors out of her own ranks left a bitter taste. Deep in the mountain forest, I led the hidden sword teenagers up 2 Dragon Mountain slopes, through ancient trees heavy with snow. I tried asking Zhang Yi about his dreams. He answered instantly, to die for me. I asked little Zhang Ju the same thing. Same answer, delivered with the same flat certainty. These children had been orphaned at birth, raised on hatred and duty, programmed to see death as their highest achievement. They were like puppets with beating hearts. It only strengthened my resolve to give them something they'd never been offered, a reason to live, not just a way to die. I told Zhang Ju to drop the word master before teacher when addressing me. Just call me teacher. She looked nervously at Zhang Yi for permission, got a nod, and then her whole face transformed into something I hadn't seen from any of them before, a genuine, sweet, little girl smile as she said, "Teacher," I answered, warmly, and for just a moment the frozen forest felt like home. The other teenagers watched her with soft expressions, and I realized she was the heart of their group, the one fragile thing they all silently agreed to protect. Then Zhang Xin dropped from a tree in front of me, his usual composure cracked by something he'd seen ahead. He said the bandit outpost was just up the slope, and what he'd found there was inhuman. His voice was tight when he told me I needed to see it for myself. My face went cold, and I said one word, move. 2 Dragon Mountains. Fortress sat on top of the main peak like a dragon's pearl, with cliffs on 3 sides and only one narrow path leading up from the halfway point. At that midpoint stood a wooden guard station where bandits kept permanent watch. What we found outside that station made my blood boil. 9 frozen corpses hung from ancient trees. Ordinary villagers whose shoulder blades had been pierced with iron hooks, their chests split open so you could see their organs, their bodies turned into grotesque ice sculptures by the freezing cold. Among them were a baby and a little girl. A tall wooden sign stood in front of the display with blood-red words. Trespassers, these worthless peasants are your fate. Kill without mercy. Even my hidden sword teenagers, who'd been raised in brutality and had seen death their whole lives, were shaking with rage. Zhang Jiu's small face went pale as stone. She whispered that killing people was one thing, but gutting babies to make decorations was pure evil. Zhang Yi's voice dropped even colder than usual when he said he'd seen this kind of madman before. People who murdered for entertainment, completely beyond redemption. Every one of them looked at me, waiting. I looked back at them with red-rimmed eyes and told them this place was rotten to the core. Every person inside had a blackened heart, and not one of them deserved to breathe another minute. Kill them all. Zong, he said, yes. And then he and the teenagers dropped low and vanished into the snow, melting into the white landscape as if they'd never been human at all, dissolving back into the frozen earth they'd emerged from. Only Zhang Jiao stayed beside me. I watched them disappear and marveled again at the hidden sword concealment technique. They didn't just hide swords. They hid themselves entirely. From inside the wooden station came a woman's scream, followed by a man howling in pain, cursing that some woman had kicked him in the groin. He threatened to have all his men take turns with her, then slice off her breasts and turn her into an ice sculpture too. More bandits laughed and goaded each other on. Then a female voice cut through, sharp, furious, but strangely fearless. She dared them to come at her, said someday a hero would flatten their mountain and cut them to pieces. There was no terror in her voice at all, only pure defiance. Zhang Jiao noticed it too and told me it was strange. Any normal woman in that situation should be paralyzed with fear, but this one sounded like she was ready to fight to the death. I deliberately tripped an alarm wire in the snow. Bells rang. A dozen bandits stumbled out of the station wearing stolen silk clothes that didn't fit, stinking and disheveled. Their leader was a massive man, nearly 2 meters tall, who looked me and Zhang Jiao up and down like we were toys delivered to his doorstep. He made a disgusting comment about wanting to have his way with me because I was pretty, while his men fought over who'd get Zhang Jiao. They talked about making us into ice sculptures when they were done. Then the big one squinted at my face and matched it to a portrait he'd been given. The useless ninth prince he'd been paid to help kill. His confidence evaporated instantly when he realized that if I was standing here alive, it meant every man he'd sent down the mountain was already dead. I said one word to Zhang Jiao. Kill. Her soft sword appeared in her palm like a magic trick, and she became something inhuman, a blur of blade light that carved the giant bandit leader apart piece by piece. Left leg, right leg, left arm, right arm. Then she cut out his tongue. She turned him into a limbless torso in the span of 2 heartbeats, deliberately keeping him alive to suffer the way his victims had suffered. Blood fountained across the snow from his stumps. The other bandits screamed and tried to run, but Zhang Jiao danced through them like a spirit, her feet barely touching the snow, and dismembered every single one the same way. Only one long-legged bandit made it to the doorway and reached for an alarm rope connected to the main fortress above. Zhang Jiao lunged after him, but she was a step too late. His hand closed around the rope. He grinned with insane triumph, but the rope went slack in his hand. I'd already thrown a silver needle that severed it before he could pull. His face went blank with shock, and then Zhang Jiao's sword opened his throat. He was the lucky one. At least he died quickly. The others lay writhing in the bloody snow as limbless stumps, slowly experiencing the same agony they'd inflicted on innocent people while staring up at their own frozen victims hanging from the trees. I looked at those ice-covered corpses and made them a promise. Not one of these monsters would escape. Heaven might not punish them, but I would. Today, I was heaven's executioner. Anyone who slaughtered the innocent would answer to me. Then I pushed open the cabin door. Inside was a naked young woman, hair wild around her face, staring directly at me. She made no move to cover herself, and her eyes were extraordinary, green and glowing, like a hungry wolf's, without a trace of the helpless victim I'd expected to find. I studied the naked girl carefully, not out of desire, but out of caution. She had no weapons hidden on her body, which made sense since she had nowhere to hide them. Her eyes held no killing intent, just something strange, like she desperately wanted to tell me something. I didn't dare turn my back on her until Zhang Jiao entered the cabin behind me. Only then did I face away, pull off my fur-lined cloak, and toss it backward for her to cover herself. She wrapped up quickly and introduced herself as Yi Jinlian, daughter of the late Governor Yi Fan of Qing Province, a high-ranking imperial official. She'd recognized me from overhearing the bandits discussing their mission to kill the useless prince on the road below. Her story was a cascade of disasters. Her father had received an imperial summons to return to the capital. On the way, he sensed something wrong with his military escort and dismissed them, continuing with just a few dozen personal guards. They were ambushed at Tiger Mountain, the same bandit stronghold Old Ghost had told me about, and everyone was slaughtered except Jinlian, who the bandits kept alive because they wanted to use her body before killing her. She was stripped and about to be violated when a group of black-clad assassins stormed the fortress and killed every bandit inside. Their leader was a woman, and from her description, I realized it was the baby-faced second holy messenger I'd killed in the pine forest. That assassin had spared Jillian's life out of some flicker of mercy, which was the only reason this girl was still breathing. But her luck was cursed. She escaped Tiger Mountain half-frozen and starving, only to stumble into 2 Dragon Mountains territory and get captured all over again. Stripped naked a second time, seconds away from being assaulted again when I arrived. She asked me bitterly whether all men in the world were driven by lust. I told her I could only speak for the bandits she'd encountered, not the entire species. She knelt and thanked me for saving her, her cloak slipping enough to reveal skin she no longer seemed to care about protecting. I told her to stand. I hadn't come here to rescue anyone. I'd come to kill bandits, and saving her was an accident. Then she asked about what I'd said outside. My promise to teach every bandit on this road a lesson about what happens when you prey on innocent people. Her eyes caught fire. She begged to follow me to Huang Province and help me deliver that lesson. Her entire family was dead. She had nothing left, and the only thing keeping her alive was a vow to see every bandit in the world destroyed. I refused flatly. She was the daughter of a second-rank imperial official. Even with her father dead, she had family connections and property in the capital. If word got out that a young noblewoman followed me to my territory alone, the court would assume I'd kidnapped her from my bed, and the scandal would damage us both. When I mentioned that the woman who'd saved her at Tiger Mountain was the same assassin I'd killed at the pine forest, she went quiet for a moment. Then she said the woman had died trying to murder a prince, so her death was her own doing. She only asked permission to retrieve the body and give it a proper burial to repay the debt of her life being spared. I respected that answer. She tried one more time, dropping my cloak and offering me her virginity as payment for saving her. Zhang Jiao's eyes went enormous, and she snapped at Jinlian to have some dignity, declaring that her teacher wasn't someone a stranger could just throw herself at. I felt blood rush to my head, but I walked forward, picked up the cloak, and draped it over Jinlian's shoulders myself. I told her I wouldn't let her brand me as the kind of man who takes advantage of a desperate woman. She lowered her head and asked if I thought her body was dirty because bandits had seen it. I said no, and accidentally added that her body was beautiful, which earned me a death glare from Zhang Jiao and a burning blush from Jinlian. She lifted her chin and declared that since I'd seen her naked, she could never marry another man by this era's standards. She proposed becoming my eyes and ears in the capital instead, an intelligence agent reporting court affairs back to me in distant Huang Province. That actually made strategic sense. I needed someone reliable in the capital, far from Huang Province. But I wasn't ready to commit. I told her we'd discuss it later and turned to leave for the bandit fortress above. She threw on some stolen clothes from the cabin and followed me. Up the mountain path, Zhang Jiao glaring daggers at her the entire way, both of them trailing behind me toward whatever waited at the top of 2 Dragon Mountain. Yi Jinlian followed me and Zhang Jiao up the narrow mountain path, called One-Line Sky, a trail barely wide enough for one person, with sheer cliffs dropping away on both sides. She stumbled and staggered in stolen bandit clothes and my fur cloak, but she refused to fall behind. I respected that stubbornness. She'd expected us to fight our way up through waves of guards, painting the path red with combat. Instead, every guard post we passed was already silent. Bandits slumped dead at their stations, each one killed with a single precise throat cut, blood already freezing in the snow. I didn't react, and neither did Zhang Jiao. Jinlian realized my hidden sword teenagers had gone ahead of us like invisible angels of death, clearing the entire mountain without raising a single alarm. The heavy snowfall was already burying the evidence. White flakes settling over corpses and blood like nature itself was helping us cover our tracks. Even more disturbing for Jinlian, the 9 frozen corpses from the halfway station, The murdered villagers, including the baby, had somehow been carried to the peak and were standing upright in the snow outside the bandit fortress gate. She couldn't comprehend how anyone had moved them up those impossible cliffs so quickly and silently. The fortress sprawled across the mountaintop, surrounded by crude wooden walls enclosing dozens of shacks, with a large central building marked Hall of Righteousness. I laughed coldly at that name. These animals dared call themselves righteous. Inside, I could hear them drinking and celebrating. A man called the Third Holy Messenger, another of the Crown Prince's assassin commanders, sat in the leader's chair getting drunk with the gang. The bandits were bragging about what they'd do to Sima Lan once they captured her, each fantasy more revolting than the last. One wanted to play with her for half a year. Another wanted to skin her alive and stretch her skin over another woman's face. A third wanted to cut off her head, hollow out the skull, and use it as a wine cup. They laughed and cheered each other on while the Third Holy Messenger egged them along with his own filthy grin. I kicked both doors off their hinges. They crashed flat on the floor, and the room went dead silent. Before anyone could react, 9 frozen corpses flew through the doorway and slammed into the center of the hall. The murdered villagers, the gutted babies staring with dead eyes at the men who'd killed them. The bandits sobered up instantly and grabbed their weapons. The Third Holy Messenger demanded to know who I was. I stepped through the doorway and told him I wasn't his friend because I walked the righteous path and we had nothing in common. I'd come to teach them a lesson. When they recognized me as the useless prince they'd been hired to kill, the room erupted into chaos. They screamed about avenging their fallen leaders and taking Sima Lan as their prize. The Third Holy Messenger shouted them quiet and asked what lesson I wanted to teach. I told them the simplest truth in the world: those who kill will be killed. They thought they were demons because they murdered helpless people, but tonight they'd meet something far worse than themselves. I told them I wanted every drop of their blood drained to wash this mountain clean of its sins. I wanted their tongues cut so they couldn't scream, their tendons pulled, their bones shattered, their limbs severed so they'd feel everything those frozen corpses had felt. I wanted their heads stacked into a monument so high that anyone who saw it would never dare harm an innocent person again. My principle was simple: blood for blood, violence to end violence, evil to destroy evil, so that good people could live. I gave the command, kill, from the empty air all around. The fortress, a chorus of young voices echoed across Two Dragon Mountain, repeating my words back to every bandit cowering inside those wooden walls. Our master says he has a lesson to teach you. The hidden sword teenagers' voices echoed through the fortress from every direction, repeating my words back to the bandits like ghosts chanting a death sentence. Blood for blood, violence to end violence, evil to destroy evil, so that good people can live. The bandits couldn't see where the voices came from, and the fear started eating at them before a single blade was drawn. For bandits in the hall charged me anyway, swinging their crude swords at my body but carefully avoiding my head. They needed it intact to collect their bounty. Zhangju stepped in front of me like a flash of starlight, her small sword deflecting all 4 weapons in a single motion, then threading through the gaps so fast it looked like one continuous strike. For throats opened, for bodies hit the floor before the blood even had time to arc properly. She was 14 years old, and she'd just killed 4 grown men in the time it takes to blink. Behind me, Yi Jinlian watched everything with wide eyes. I heard her whisper that if being a useless fool meant standing fearlessly before hundreds of killers and speaking truth about justice, then she wished every man in the world was that kind of fool. She repeated my words like a prayer: blood for blood, let the good people live. Instead, they echoed everything she'd been screaming inside since her family was murdered. Then the roof exploded. My hidden sword teenagers crashed through from above, raining crossbow bolts down into the packed hall like a storm, pinning bandits to the floor before landing among them with swords drawn. They'd climbed the outside walls, positioned themselves on the rooftop without making a sound, and attacked from the one direction nobody was watching. The slaughter was systematic and merciless. Left hand fired the crossbow to clear a landing zone. Right hand drew the sword the instant their feet touched ground, and then they began cutting. I'd given them specific orders. I wanted these bandits to experience everything they'd inflicted on their victims. Limbs severed, bodies broken, the same agony those frozen villagers and that gutted baby had felt in their final moments. The teenagers carried out my commands with cold precision, dismembering every bandit they reached while repeating fragments of my words. When bandits begged for mercy, screaming they'd never kill again, the teenagers answered that my master said their existence insulted every innocent person they'd murdered. When bandits offered to reveal the treasure vault's location in exchange for their lives, the teenagers smiled and told them to try being good people in their next life. The floor of the Hall of Righteousness became a lake of blood, ankle deep, with severed limbs floating in it like driftwood. 300 bandits were reduced to screaming stumps or silent corpses in minutes. The teenagers moved through them like demons from a painting of hell, drenched head to toe in crimson, coordinating their attacks in tight groups that isolated and overwhelmed each pocket of resistance. The third holy messenger, the crown prince's man who'd been drinking and laughing about what they'd do to Milan, sat in the bandit chief's tigerskin chair the entire time and never lifted a finger. He watched his disposable allies die one by one, calculating, waiting for the teenagers to burn through their newly acquired internal energy. He was a peak second-tier martial artist, far stronger than any of my hidden sword warriors individually, and he knew that freshly awakened cultivators had shallow reserves. Once their chi ran dry, he'd swoop in and kill me while they stood helpless. When the last bandit stopped twitching, he proved his theory right. He told me my people were spent, their one breath of true chi exhausted, and now it was my turn to die. He launched himself off the chair like a diving hawk, sword extended, chi blazing, flying over the heads of my exhausted teenagers straight at me. Blood from the floor splashed upward in waves from the force of his leap. He was laughing about the 10,000 gold taels my head was worth, declaring I'd be the first prince he'd ever killed. Something strange happened at that moment with the frozen corpses standing in the hall. The two children, the baby and the little girl whose chests had been ripped open, slowly closed their eyes, their tortured expressions finally settling into peace. As if they knew their suffering had been answered. The third holy messenger came flying at me like a hawk, sword aimed straight at the space between my eyes. My hidden sword teenagers couldn't help. Their chi was completely drained from the massacre. They didn't even try to turn around. Instead, they were staring at something behind the hall's back wall, raising their crossbows at it, which told me they'd already detected the real threat I'd been expecting. Zhang Jiu threw herself between me and the incoming blade. She was impossibly brave but hopelessly outmatched, a freshly minted third-tier warrior against a peak second-tier killer. His sword shattered hers on contact, and the impact launched her tiny body through the air. She coughed up blood before she even hit the ground, but she'd bought me the fraction of a second I needed. His blade stopped a hair's width from my forehead. I could feel the chi burning my skin. He thought he'd won. Riches, women, glory, all one thrust away. Then confusion crept across his face. Why wasn't the sword moving forward? He looked down and saw my bare palms clamped around his blade, holding it frozen in place. No internal energy, just raw natural strength squeezing steel until it couldn't budge. What he didn't notice was the silver needle I'd already planted in his lower abdomen, 3 inches below his navel, directly into his dantian, the reservoir where all internal energy gathers. His chi scattered like water from a broken jar. His grip went slack, his body turned heavy, and he crashed to his knees like a puppet with cut strings. I pulled his own sword from his weakened fingers and cut off his left hand, then his right, then both legs. He screamed the entire time, each cry more desperate than the last, until he was just another limbless torso writhing in the blood lake alongside the bandits he'd refused to help. Before he passed out from pain, he screamed something that confirmed what I already suspected. He called out to the mountain lord of Two Dragon Mountain, begging him to intervene, threatening that his elder sister would take revenge if he died here. Zhang Yi ordered his team to fire into the wooden wall behind the throne. Crossbow bolts punched through the planks, and someone grunted in pain on the other side. The wall exploded outward, revealing a hidden room just as large as the main hall. Sitting on a massive bed in full military armor, iron helmet, chainmail, long spear, was a giant man over 2 meters tall with hawk eyebrows and wolf eyes. This was Commander Zhuan, a military officer from the Crown Prince's Eastern Palace, the real power behind Two Dragon Mountain all along. The bandits were his front, The robberies and murders were his operation, and the Crown Prince was the one ultimately responsible for every frozen corpse hanging from these trees. Zuoyan's soldiers tore away the walls and roof with grappling hooks, exposing all of us under the open sky. Armored archers rose from the snow around the demolished building in every direction. Arrows knocked and aimed at me and my exhausted teenagers. This was a professional military formation, not bandits, not assassins, but trained Imperial soldiers. The mountain fortress, the bandit ambush in the valley, the silver-tier assassins on the road, all of it had been layers of a single trap designed to drain my forces before this final kill box closed around me. Zuoyan bragged that his military nickname was the Butcher, and that he collected human skin as trophies. He said mine would be his most prized piece. He didn't fire immediately because greed made him pause. He wanted the legendary treasure of the former Qin dynasty that the Hidden Dragon Society supposedly guarded. He demanded I reveal its location in exchange for a quick death. I kept walking toward him through ankle-deep blood, smiling, and asked if he was really so sure he could kill me. He laughed and listed the facts. My warriors were spent, Sima Lan was miles away guarding the convoy, and nobody was coming to save me. He said I was a turtle trapped in a jar, and even if I screamed until my throat tore, no help would arrive. He asked me one more time where the treasure was hidden. Zuoyan demanded to know about a legendary treasure supposedly left behind by the former Qin dynasty, a hoard so vast that whoever possessed it could dominate the entire continent, not just the Xia Empire. He revealed something I hadn't fully understood before. The real reason my father kept my mother alive all these years wasn't just her beauty. It was because he believed she knew where this treasure was hidden, and he'd been patiently trying to extract that secret from her for 16 years. My tainted bloodline, which everyone said was the reason he wanted me dead, was actually something he'd tolerated precisely because of this treasure. Every piece of the puzzle about why I was still alive suddenly rearranged itself in my head. I told Zuoyan I genuinely knew nothing about any treasure. He didn't believe me and ordered his archers to prepare to fire. That's when arrows came from a direction nobody expected, not from his men, but from the sky beyond the fortress walls. Iron-tipped shafts punched through every one of his armored archers' throats with terrifying precision, killing them before a single one could loose their own bow. Sima Gu appeared on the peak's edge with the Sima household's elite warriors behind her, bows drawn and aimed at Zuoyan's remaining soldiers. She reported calmly that she'd followed my instructions. The traitors inside our group had been eliminated. Zuoyan's hidden sentries and scouts around the mountain had been cleared out, and the road had been sealed. Someone had tried to send a pigeon message back to the capital, but her people had killed the messenger, shot down the bird, and roasted it for my dinner. Zuoyan's face went gray. Everything he'd built, the layered trap with bandits as the outer shell, assassins as the middle layer, and his armored soldiers as the final killing blow, had been anticipated and dismantled piece by piece. He tried to save himself by dropping to his knees and offering to switch sides, swearing eternal loyalty to me if I spared his life. Minutes ago, he'd been promising to peel my skin off for his collection. Now he was calling his own words worthless gas. I asked my hidden sword teenagers what they saw. Zhang Yi called him a disloyal, unprincipled worm. Zhang Jiao spat that a man who betrays one master will betray the next without hesitation. I agreed with both of them and told everyone to remember this lesson. A person without honor is like a rabid dog that will eventually bite its own owner. Letting him live would make my promise to avenge the innocent people of Two Dragon Mountain meaningless. Men like him had to die, no exceptions. His own bodyguards heard my judgment and quietly stepped away from him, pulling their shields aside and leaving him exposed. Zuoyan went berserk, screaming that they were just as guilty as he was, and started hacking down his own soldiers with his saber. His formation collapsed into chaos. I gave the order to attack. Sima Ji's warriors and my hidden sword teenagers unleashed everything they had. Every remaining crossbow bolt rained down on the disintegrating military formation. The iron armor saved some of them from instant death, but the volley shattered their ranks and killed half of them. When our ammunition ran out, Zuoyan rallied his survivors and charged toward the mountain path, desperate to escape. I let them through. My teenagers had burned all their chi in the earlier battle, and forcing a cornered army into a last stand would cost lives I couldn't afford to lose. I explained the principle to my people. A trapped dog fights to the death, but a running dog just keeps running. We split apart, opened a corridor, and let Zui and's men sprint past us toward the mountain trail, then followed at a comfortable distance with Sima Ji's team doing the same. Zuan saw the empty path ahead and screamed with relief, telling his soldiers they'd make it if they just kept running, that the useless prince didn't have the nerve to fight them head-on. His men exhaled for the first time in minutes. Then the ground trembled beneath their feet, and a wall of figures rose up from the snow, blocking the only way down the mountain. Zuan's spirit shattered completely. He spun back toward me, screaming, demanding to know how many more hidden forces I had, begging me to show them all at once. His voice cracked as he asked one final time whether surrender was truly impossible. Blocking the mountain path were heavy cavalry, soldiers and horses both wrapped in scale armor from head to hoof, looking like iron demons risen from the earth. Zuan recognized them immediately, and I could see the terror hit him. Heavy cavalry were the kings of any battlefield. Their armor could withstand a full power strike from a third-tier martial artist. They advanced in rows like moving iron walls, crushing everything in their path, and even grandmasters avoided fighting them head-on because once your chi ran out, the iron tide would simply roll over you. What Zuan couldn't understand was how heavy cavalry had gotten to the top of a mountain thousands of meters high. Horses carrying hundreds of pounds of armor would collapse before reaching the peak through deep snow. It should have been impossible. He charged anyway, launching himself into the air like a hawk, planning to vault over the cavalry formation by using their spear thrusts as stepping stones, a trick experienced warriors used against conventional heavy riders. But my cavalry didn't follow the textbook. Instead of raising their lances, they pulled short crossbows from their waists and fired 40 bolts into him while he hung in the sky with nowhere to dodge. I'd taught them that lesson on the road. An airborne enemy has no footing, no leverage, no way to change direction. They're just a living target. Shoot them, and they die. Zuan crashed to the ground like a bird full of arrows, bleeding from dozens of holes. In his final moments, he admitted he'd been a legitimate soldier once, earning his rank through real combat. But greed and the Crown Prince's promises had turned him into a monster. He asked if he was really beyond forgiveness. I told him yes. If he wanted absolution, he could find the ghosts of everyone he'd murdered and beg them in the afterlife. He said if he could live again, he'd choose differently. Then he stopped breathing. Lu Shu gave the order, and the heavy cavalry charged. Iron lances skewered the remaining soldiers one by one. Between the cavalry in front, my hidden sword teenagers behind, and Sima Ji's warriors closing from the flanks, not a single enemy survived. Afterward, Lu Shu removed his helmet, and I finally understood. My wounded veterans had been hiding their true identity all along. They weren't just light cavalry. They were trained heavy cavalry, the elite of the elite, and they'd kept that secret even from me. When I accused them of deceiving their prince, one old soldier just grinned and said it didn't matter whether they rode light or heavy. They were my soldiers either way. I couldn't argue with that. The mystery of how they'd reached the mountaintop was solved when Xiao Bai appeared at the trail in trance, looking pleased with himself. The 5 blacksmith families who'd joined us had brought 50 sets of heavy armor as their entrance gift. They'd been making imperial-grade equipment for years and smuggled these sets out when they fled the capital. When my veterans saw the armor, their eyes lit up and they transformed into heavy riders on the spot, completely on their own initiative. Xiao Bai had hauled the armor up the mountain using snow sleds, something I'd invented the previous night at Peach Blossom Fortress by removing wheels from a cart and replacing them with smooth wooden runners. That single innovation had changed everything about how we moved through snow, and it would dramatically shorten our travel time to Huang Province. Xiao Bai surveyed the demolished bandit fortress with shining eyes and asked the question everyone was thinking. Where was the treasure vault, and how much was inside? Sima Gu came to say goodbye after the battle, explaining that Sima Lan had ordered all her guards back to protect the convoy the moment fighting ended. I offered to share the loot with them, but Sima Gu smiled and said her mistress had predicted I'd do exactly that, and refused. Sima Lan knew our treasury needed every coin more than hers did, and she'd pay her own guards from her own pocket. That gesture hit everyone around me hard. Xiao Bai started calling her Queen Lan on the spot. declaring that any woman who saved him money and put our household first had his undying loyalty. Lu Shu, Zhang Yi, and even little Zhang Jiao all nodded. Sima Lan had passed a test she probably didn't even know she was taking. Everyone in my ragtag kingdom had quietly decided she belonged with us. The battlefield hall was solid. 1,000 gold, 10,000 silver, 100 sets of infantry armor, hundreds of weapons, 50 bows with 1,500 arrows, and 30 grappling hooks. Everything got loaded onto the snow sleds. Then I led a team underground. Dying bandits had revealed that 2 Dragon Mountain's real treasure vault was hidden in a cave system beneath a small shack on the peak. We tore away the building and found a massive trapdoor covering a shaft that dropped into darkness. Cold air rushed up from below, carrying a feeling like the breath of something ancient and buried. Zhang Yi and 10 hidden sword teenagers went in first, 2 on point with shields and torches, the rest flanking me and Xiao Bai. The entrance was a man-made tunnel with stone steps spiraling downward, but after 30 meters it opened into a natural limestone cavern with ceilings 10 meters high and stalactites glittering in the firelight. The bandits had simply punched a hole down from the surface and connected to this existing cave system. Zhang Yi noted that poisonous creatures had already been cleared out, but warned about possible traps. Then he and the teenagers draped on special cloaks and melted into the cave darkness like ghosts, their hidden sword concealment technique working even better in total blackness than it did in snow. I walked forward with just Zhang Jiao, Xiao Bai, and 2 torch-bearing guards visible around me. The tunnel leveled out after another 100 meters, the ground becoming dry with scattered limestone. I could feel we were getting close. Around a final bend, natural light appeared ahead, meaning another opening to the outside, along with dead bandits on the ground and the unmistakable smell of fresh blood. Then came screaming. Women's voices, young and terrified, at least a dozen of them, begging for help from somewhere deeper in the cave. Zhang Jiao tugged my sleeve and asked if this could be another trap. She mentioned old stories about female monsters hiding in caves, pretending to be helpless victims to lure men inside and devour them. She wondered whether the bandits' cruelty might have come from having their hearts eaten by such creatures. I told her I wasn't sure what waited ahead, and we picked up the pace. I told Zhang Jiao there were no real monsters in the world, only people who let darkness consume their hearts until they became worse than any demon from a storybook. She nodded quietly and filed that lesson away. We pushed deeper into the cave. When the path opened up, Zhang Jiao darted ahead and cut down the remaining bandit guards before I even rounded the corner. She called back, sounding almost disappointed. No monsters, just men. The cavern was enormous, 30 meters high with natural light streaming in from an opening that led to a sheer cliff face. The cave's true entrance, hidden from the world. Inside were 2 iron cages. The first held 10 young women in thin silk garments, barely clothed, beautiful despite their hollow eyes and tear-streaked faces. They begged me to save them, each one identifying herself as a daughter of powerful noble families in the capital, dukes, generals, ministers. These were the empire's most privileged women, kidnapped from the roads around the capital. The second cage turned my stomach cold. It was packed with skeletons, dozens of them, all with the delicate bone structure of young women, piled on top of each other in layers. The girl who spoke first, Li Furong, daughter of Duke Li, explained everything through her tears. The bandits had been collecting beautiful noble women and secretly delivering them to the crown prince as playthings. The skeletons were the ones he'd already used up and discarded, murdered after he'd grown bored with them. Their bodies shipped back here to rot in the dark because even their corpses belonged to him in his twisted mind. The girls in the cage were tomorrow's delivery. A fury rose inside me so hot I had to close my eyes and breathe until I could think clearly again. I'd always known the crown prince was cruel, but this was something beyond cruelty. A systematic hunting operation feeding young women into a death machine disguised as a prince's palace. If this man ever became emperor, no woman in the empire would be safe. I swore silently to those piled bones that someday I'd return to the capital, walk into the Eastern Palace, and make him answer for every life he'd destroyed. I couldn't tell these women who I really was. If they knew the prince who saved them was the same one the crown prince was trying to murder, that knowledge could get them killed. And if the Crown Prince ever discovered this cave had been found and its prisoners freed, he'd hunt down everyone connected to it. Their only protection was ignorance. So when they asked my name, I told them, "My name is Good Person." They stared at me, confused, then understood I was refusing to identify myself. I explained that the safest thing for all of us was mutual amnesia. They needed to forget my face, forget this cave, forget this entire nightmare ever happened. Go home, live well, marry someone decent, and never speak of this place again. I'd forget I ever saw them too. If we passed each other on the streets of the capital someday, we'd walk by like strangers. The only way to escape pain was to leave it behind completely. The real reason I didn't share was simpler. If the Crown Prince didn't know who'd been imprisoned here, he couldn't target them for knowing his secret. Their safety depended on becoming invisible. Li Furong bit her lip hard and memorized my face anyway. She told me if I ever needed anything, the doors of Duke Li's mansion were open to me. The others followed, each calling out their family names and addresses before Zhang Jiu blindfolded them and led them out through a separate route, ensuring they never saw my soldiers or learned anything else about my forces. With the women gone, I finally turned my attention to the treasure vault. The left side of the cavern was stacked floor to ceiling with roughly 1,000 burlap sacks, grains spilling from their seams, maybe 100,000 pounds of rice. Xiao Bai's eyes nearly popped out of his skull. On the right side stood rows of wooden crates, their contents unknown. Xiao Bai could barely contain himself, guessing they held the bandits' gold and silver reserves. I told him to crack them open and see what we'd won. I found a hidden treasure cave on the right side of the bandit hideout. My hidden guards came out and sorted all the chests. There were 86 chests in total. 60 ordinary wooden chests, 20 ebony chests, 5 sandalwood chests, and 1 iron chest. Since this bandit camp secretly belonged to the Crown Prince, I believe the treasure inside would be far more valuable than what ordinary bandits could collect. Before opening anything, I warned Song Yi to be careful because the chests might contain traps. We opened the 60 ordinary wooden chests first. Every chest was filled with 100 silver ingots, each weighing 10 taels, making a total of 60,000 taels of silver. Xiao Bai was very excited because the silver had no official marks, which meant we could use or sell it freely. Next, we opened the 20 ebony chests. They were filled with gold ingots, also neatly arranged. Each chest contained 100 gold ingots weighing 10 taels each, giving us a total of 20,000 taels of gold. Xiao Bai became even more excited and wanted us to destroy every bandit camp we found. I pointed out that the silver and gold bars were all the same size and weight. Real loot stolen by bandits would have different shapes and sizes, so these treasures were probably not stolen from travelers. Song Yi agreed and guessed that this was the Crown Prince's secret treasury. Since the Crown Prince secretly sold official positions for money, he could not keep this illegal wealth inside the Eastern Palace. That also explained why Zuoan had appeared at the bandit camp. I smiled because if the treasure truly belonged to the Crown Prince, it had now become mine. Then we opened the sandalwood chests. They were filled with priceless treasures. One chest contained over 100 glowing night pearls. Xiao Bai suggested using them to light up my future palace in the desolate region. I refused because beautiful treasures were useless if they could not provide food or supplies. I decided that once we reached Qingzhou, I would sell every single night pearl on the black market and exchange them for resources. In the capital, one night pearl could sell for about 1,000 taels of gold because wealthy nobles loved rare treasures. Selling the whole chest alone could bring us about 100,000 taels of gold. The remaining sandalwood chests held thousands of deep-sea pearls, thousands of fine agates, and valuable jade pieces. Together, all these treasures were worth around 1.5 million taels of silver, making it an unbelievable fortune. I could not help thinking that if the Crown Prince learned that I had taken his secret treasury, he would probably be furious. Only the iron chest remained. Since it was the only one of its kind, everyone believed it held something extraordinary. Song Yi carefully cut the lock while staying alert. The moment he fully opened the lid, 3 poisoned arrows shot out at his chest. Because I had warned him in advance, he had secretly placed an iron plate under his clothes. The arrows struck the plate with a loud clang and fell harmlessly to the ground. Everyone was relieved that he was safe. After looking inside the iron chest, Song Yi's smile disappeared, and he looked completely shocked. He immediately ordered everyone except Song Jio to leave and guard both cave entrances. Then he respectfully asked me to come over alone because the object inside the iron chest was too important to be taken out or shown to everyone. I walked toward the chest, curious about what could make even calm and fearless Song Yi react with such shock. The chapter ended before the contents of the final chest were revealed. After opening the last iron chest, I understood why Song Yi had looked so shocked. Inside, there was only a piece of silk and a jade object carved with 9 lifelike dragons. The moment I saw it, I was stunned because it looked exactly like a legendary national treasure I had only read about in ancient books. I turned it over and saw the 8 ancient characters engraved on the bottom, just as the stories described. However, I could not be sure whether it was the real one or just another fake, since many copies had been made over the years and the genuine treasure had disappeared long ago. I carefully wrapped the jade in the silk and handed it to Song Yi, telling him to guard it until we could confirm whether it was real. I also ordered everyone to forget about the jade for now and not speak of it. Song Yi asked whether the crown prince knew this treasure was hidden here. I thought he probably did not. Although it was kept in a separate iron chest, it had been stored carelessly without special protection. I guessed that whoever placed it there was also unsure whether it was genuine. If the crown prince had known about it, he would have kept it in his own palace no matter if it was real or fake. Still, I decided we would test the crown prince later to find out the truth. I then ordered everyone to move all the treasure and supplies out of the cave. There was so much grain that we could not carry everything in one trip, so I decided we would make several trips and then burn the entire bandit camp to the ground. An hour later, we buried the innocent victims we had found, including the young women who had died in iron cages. I poured wine onto their graves and promised them that I had already avenged them by killing the bandits. I also promised that although the real enemy behind these crimes, the crown prince, was still too powerful, one day I would make him pay as well. Soon, thick smoke rose from the top of Two Dragon Mountain as the bandit fortress burned. The famous bandit stronghold that had existed for more than 10 years was finally gone. At the foot of the mountain, I built a mound using the heads of the dead bandits, along with Zhou and his soldiers. I was not trying to show off my victory. I wanted to send a warning to every bandit in the empire. Beside the mound, I placed a large wooden sign explaining that the bandits had robbed travelers, murdered families, kidnapped women, and committed countless cruel crimes. I declared that I had destroyed their camp because evil people deserve punishment. I also swore that if any bandit continued to harm innocent people, the Prince of Desolate Region would hunt them down no matter how far away or how powerful they were. Evil bandits would never have a place to hide. News spread quickly. Everyone learned that I had personally wiped out the 2 Dragon Mountain bandits and openly declared war against all evil bandits. Some people still called me the Foolish Prince, but many others began to question that title. Warriors who hated evil wanted to meet me, and scholars with strong ideals also became interested in following me. While our convoy continued toward the desolate region, Sima Lan asked if declaring war against all bandits was worth making so many enemies. She pointed out that many bandits would now work with the Crown Prince to stop us. I answered that it was worth it because I could not stand watching good people suffer while evil people lived freely. She smiled and said that by making this vow, I had become a banner of justice. Although I would gain many enemies, I would also attract many talented and righteous people who wanted to fight beside me. Hearing her words made me happy. I knew she truly understood my goal. Still, I reminded myself that I first had to survive all the dangers ahead before I could enjoy a peaceful future with her. As we traveled, I personally carried bags of grain into poor villages along the road. The grain had originally been stolen from the people by the bandits, so I believed it should be returned to them. Since it was a difficult season when many families had little food left, the villagers were overjoyed. Word quickly spread that I was giving away the bandits' grain to the poor, and many people began calling me a living bodhisattva. Far behind us, Hua Wujian confidently traveled toward Two Dragon Mountain with eunuch Gao. Hua Wujian was certain that I could never have survived the mountain and even joked that my body would probably be hanging beside the road. He laughed and claimed there was only one way for me to pass through Two Dragon Mountain, by dying, completely unaware that I had already destroyed the entire bandit camp. After leaving Two Dragon Mountain, I learned nothing about what Hua Wujin was thinking, but he believed I had already died. He knew the Crown Prince had arranged the ambush at Two Dragon Mountain and was certain that neither I nor my guards could survive. He even expected the bandits and assassins to destroy all the evidence after killing me. Since his scouts never returned, he guessed they had either died in the fighting or were waiting ahead with news of my death. In truth, they had all been killed by the mysterious woman in white, so he would never receive any reports. When Hua Wujian saw the smoke rising from the mountain, he believed the plan had succeeded. Then he reached the mound of heads that I had built. At first, he happily thought they were the heads of my people. After Eunuch Gao reminded him to act sad, he pretended to cry and even promised to avenge me. Secretly, he was delighted because he planned to claim that the gifts from the emperor had burned on the mountain, keep the wealth for himself, and later kill Eunuch Gao to remove the last witness. Everything changed when they read the wooden sign beside the mound. They realized the heads belonged to the bandits, Zhuan, and the assassins, not to my people. Hua Wujian was so shocked that he fell from his horse. He could not understand how the useless prince had defeated so many powerful enemies and destroyed the famous bandit fortress. My declaration of war against all evil bandits also made him question everything he had believed about me. He realized that only someone with great courage and determination could write such words. Afraid that they would be blamed, Hua Wujian and Eunuch Gao rushed after my convoy. 2 hours later, they caught up with us and respectfully delivered the emperor's gifts. The convoy included 10,000 taels of gold, 100,000 taels of silver, 100 valuable treasures, 1,000 rolls of silk, 10,000 rolls of tribute cloth, and many other supplies carried on 100 wagons. I noticed that Hua Wujian and Eunuch Gao looked nervous and could not even look me in the eye. Sima Lan smiled and guessed that they had expected me to die so they could take the gifts for themselves. We both understood what had happened without saying anything more. I told Sima Lan that her smile was beautiful, and she shyly answered that my smile was also beautiful. For a moment, the long journey felt much warmer because of her gentle words. Soon, Song Jiu reported that another man had come to join me and help fight bandits. Sima Lan reminded me that I had already turned away more than 10 warriors who wanted to follow me. I explained that I would always meet every volunteer myself. If someone truly wanted to protect innocent people, I would accept them. If they only wanted fame or attention, I would refuse them. Song Yi then asked why I was willing to recruit poor villagers instead of skilled fighters. I looked back at our growing convoy. After giving grain to many villages, I had seen how terribly the poor lived. Their homes had broken walls and leaking roofs. Entire families shared one straw mat and one torn blanket. Sometimes a whole family owned only one pair of pants, worn by whoever needed to leave the house. During winter, many people survived by eating tree bark, and many froze or starved to death by the roadside. Rich families owned the land and food, while countless poor people suffered every year. Whenever I found families willing to sell their children because of hunger, I gave them food and money but never took their children as servants. Instead, when I met families who wanted to live together no matter how difficult life became, I invited them to become people of the desolate region and travel with me to build a new future. They trusted me because staying behind meant certain hunger and death, while following me gave them hope. As a result, my convoy continued to grow. More than 100 families, over 500 people in total, now traveled with us, including elderly people, adults, young people, and children. I gave them warm military cotton clothing, even if the sizes did not fit perfectly. When I looked back, the children happily waved at me and thanked me for the food. Seeing their smiles made my heart ache, but it also strengthened my resolve to protect them. I rode ahead to meet the newest volunteer. He was an enormous man, nearly 2 meters tall, wearing tiger skin clothes and carrying a steel fork and a large bow. He looked incredibly strong. I asked why he wanted to follow me. He answered that he wanted to kill evil bandits, but even more than that, he wanted to kill the Tianling cavalry and the world's most beautiful woman, believing that doing so would protect the desolate region. His surprising answer immediately caught my attention. I wanted to know more about Zhao Zichang's strength, so I asked him about his martial arts level. His answer surprised everyone. He said his cultivation was strange because it changed depending on his opponent. Against weak enemies, he became weaker. Against strong enemies, he became stronger. No matter who he fought, he believed he could always defeat his opponent. His answer made everyone curious. Then he looked at my hidden sword guards and immediately recognized that they practiced the ancient hidden sword technique. He even saw through the martial arts level they had carefully hidden. Normally, only true masters could do that. My guards were shocked and immediately treated him with respect. Zhao Zichang smiled honestly and said that if they ever had to fight, they only needed to call him because he would never let them lose. His simple words quickly won their friendship. I continued asking questions. Zhao Zichang said that if he sparred with a first-rate expert, they would probably end in a draw. But if it was a battle to the death, he was confident he could kill a first-rate expert. When I asked about grandmasters, he admitted he could not defeat one, but he could escape from them. He also promised that as long as he was with me, even a grandmaster would not be able to kill me. At that moment, Song Yi returned after investigating Zhao Zichang's background. He confirmed that everything Zhao Zichang had said was true. Zhao village was only a few hundred meters away. Zhao Zichang and his master had lived there for 6 years, hunting in the mountains and sharing all their food with the villagers. Because of them, no one in the village had starved, and even the 2 Dragon Mountain bandits had never dared attack the village. Everyone described Zhao Zichang as an honest and kind man. Song Yi also told me that Zhao Zichang's master had a daughter with a widow. The little girl was 6 years old and had always lived with Zhao Zichang like his own younger sister. When I asked about his master, Zhao Zichang said that a year ago his master had left behind a letter and traveled away with the widow. His master's name was Master Gu, but he had never revealed his real name. I was disappointed because anyone capable of teaching Zhao Zichang must be an extraordinary person, and I would have liked to recruit him as well. I then asked Zhao Zichang whether he wanted to bring his little sister with us to the desolate region. He immediately knelt and pledged his life to me. I helped him stand up and welcomed both of them into my household. I promised that as long as I had food, neither of them would ever go hungry. Since he knew the desolate region well, I also hoped he would help me build it in the future. Zhao Zichang then asked me for one promise. He said that if we ever fought against the Tianlang army, he wanted to be the first soldier to charge into battle. I agreed without hesitation. He called for his younger sister, Zhao Ziying. A small girl wearing a colorful cotton coat stood up from the grass beside the road. She looked at me with big curious eyes and asked her brother if I was really the prince who had destroyed the bandits, because I looked younger than him. She even wondered if I was a fake. Everyone burst into laughter. I gently pinched her cheek, and she complained that I was proving her right by teasing her. Her innocent words made everyone laugh even harder. Just then, Sima Lan walked over, picked up Zhao Ziying, and warmly invited her to ride in the same carriage. The little girl looked at me and asked if she was really allowed to ride in a carriage. I smiled and told her of course she could. She happily agreed and said I was a good big brother. I thanked her for the compliment and joked that I would work even harder to become an even better brother. Everyone laughed again. I noticed that Sima Lan had already guessed what I wanted to do. She had arranged the best place for Zhao Ziying without me even asking. Zhao Zichang was deeply moved. He knew Sima Lan was the famous daughter of the left prime minister and one of the greatest beauties in the empire. Having his little sister cared for and taught by someone like her was a kindness he felt he could never repay. Just then, our convoy suddenly stopped. Gao Fei rushed over on horseback with a bright red handprint on his face. He angrily reported that a woman dressed in black had blocked the road, slapped him, and captured Lu Shu. She was standing on Lu Shu's back and demanded that I come to meet her. Otherwise, she would kill him. I immediately jumped onto my horse and told Zhao Zichang to come with me. He ran beside my horse without falling behind. Soon, I saw the mysterious woman in black waiting for us. I saw a woman in black holding Lu Shu on the ground with her sword at his throat. She asked if he was afraid to die, but he proudly said no. She laughed and told him she had sealed his body, so he could not even kill himself. My soldiers quickly surrounded her with bows, crossbows, and hidden fighters. I asked who she was, why she wanted to see me, and told her to take her foot off Lu Shu. She looked at me and said I looked even better than in my portrait. She called herself Yao Yao and said she would ask me one question. If my answer pleased her, she would free Lu Shu. If not, she would kill both of us and destroy my convoy. I guess she was the leader of the black-clothed assassins. I offered my own life in exchange for Lu Shu's. Everyone was shocked. Lu Shu cried and begged me not to come closer because he believed his life was not worth mine. I told everyone they were wrong. I said my life was not more valuable than Lu Shu's. We all have one life, no matter where we were born. Lu Shu was ready to die to protect me and everyone in the prince's manor. If he could risk his life for me, then I could risk mine for him. I said that if everyone was willing to stand for me, then I should stand for everyone. My words deeply moved all my people, and they respected me even more. Sima Lan supported my decision instead of stopping me. She promised that if anyone hurt me, she would hunt them down no matter where they hid. As I walked forward, I shared a few romantic words with her about fate and meeting across different lifetimes. She smiled, and everyone could see how close we had become. Yao Yao became jealous and mocked us. She said she would gladly kill me to avenge her dead companions. I calmly walked up to her and told her to do it if that was what she wanted. She immediately thrust her sword toward my chest. Yao Yao suddenly attacked me with her sword. My people were terrified because they thought I was about to die. My hidden guards rushed to protect me, but her sword was too fast. I did not move away. Instead, I stepped forward and joked that she did not even ask her question before trying to kill me. She said she hated me and stabbed straight at my chest. Her sword hit the iron armor hidden under my clothes. The impact threw me backward, but it did not kill me. Her sword tip broke. I was hurt inside and coughed up blood, but I quickly took medicine and felt much better. As soon as Lu Shu was free, my men fired arrows at Yao Yao. She easily avoided them and chased after me. My young guards tried to stop her, but she knocked them away with one strike. She proudly said that a top martial artist could defeat thousands of ordinary fighters. Then she attacked Zhao Zichong, thinking he was only a simple hunter. She was completely wrong. Zhao blocked her attack with his iron staff. His strength and inner power were even greater than hers. When she tried to grab his weapon, her hand was burned by his powerful energy. Before she could recover, Zhao swung his second iron staff down at her head. Only then did Yao Yao realize she had fallen into my trap. She remembered how every mission against me had failed. She never learned who killed her men because the battlefields were cleaned up, and she blamed the powerful Sima family instead. She also kept being stopped by the mysterious woman in white, who ruined her plans again and again. Her forces were destroyed, she was wounded, and she was full of anger. She had waited here to lure me out and kill me with one attack. At first, her plan worked because I walked right up to her. She even thought I was much more handsome than the crown prince, but she still intended to cut off my head and collect her reward. Instead, everything went wrong. My hidden armor saved my life, Lu Shu escaped, and Zhao Zichong revealed that he was a true master. Yao Yao felt angry and frustrated because she had been tricked. As Zhao's iron staff came down toward her head, she realized she was only a tiny moment away from death.